Alessia Varelli never imagined that escaping her powerful father's control in Switzerland would lead her into an even deadlier trap in Barcelona. When a mysterious stranger appeared to save her from her pursuers, Alicia had no idea he was Luca Devereaux, the very man her father had arranged for her to marry. But behind this forced marriage lurked a fatal conspiracy. Her father planned to eliminate Luca right at the wedding ceremony. Now Alessia faces an impossible choice: become a pawn for the most powerful man in her life, or destroy everything to claim her freedom. Please like and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. Follow until the end to discover the shocking conclusion. The rain came down hard on the cobblestone streets of Barcelona's Gothic quarter, turning every narrow alley into a river of shadow and noise. Alessia Varelli pressed herself against the cold stone wall, her breath coming in shallow gasps, her designer coat soaked through and clinging to her skin. She could hear them, footsteps echoing somewhere behind her, getting closer. Always closer. 3 weeks. That's how long she'd managed to stay invisible. She pushed off the wall and ran, her boots slipping on the wet stones. The backpack bouncing against her shoulders held everything she owned now: a few changes of clothes, her laptop, 2 burner phones, and enough cash to last maybe another month if she was careful. Not much to show for 26 years of life as a Varelli. Not much to show for being the daughter of one of the most powerful men in Switzerland. The alley spilled her out onto a wider street, tourists huddled under awnings and locals rushing past with newspapers held over their heads. Alessia darted across the street, nearly getting clipped by a taxi, the driver's horn blaring behind her. She didn't look back. Looking back was what got you caught. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. The good one, not the burners. She shouldn't have kept it. Every cybersecurity article she'd read in her panicked research said the same thing: if you're running, leave your old life completely behind. But she couldn't. Not yet. There were people she needed to warn, people who might get hurt because she'd disappeared. She ducked into a small cafe, the warm air hitting her like a wall. The place was packed with people escaping the rain, steam rising from wet coats, the smell of coffee and baked bread almost overwhelming. Alessia found a corner table near the back exit, always near an exit, and pulled out her phone with shaking hands. 4 missed calls. All from the same number. All from Geneva. Her father. She stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over the callback button. Part of her. The part that had spent her whole life trying to earn his approval, trying to be the daughter he wanted, almost pressed it. Almost. Instead, she opened her messages. The last one had come through an hour ago. You cannot run forever, Alessia. Come home. We can discuss this reasonably. Reasonable. Her father's favorite word. It was reasonable that she attend the schools he chose. Reasonable that she study international finance instead of architecture. Reasonable that she work in his company, live in his properties, exist within the parameters he set. And it was perfectly reasonable, in his mind, that she marry a man she'd never met to strengthen a business alliance he'd been cultivating for years. She'd found out about the arrangement by accident. A conversation overheard through a door left slightly ajar in her father's study. 2 men discussing her future like she was a commodity, a bargaining chip, a signature on a contract. She'd stood in that hallway, her whole world tilting, understanding for the first time that she wasn't her father's daughter. She was his investment. So she ran. Alessia deleted the message and powered down the phone. She'd turn it on again tomorrow, somewhere else, just long enough to check if anyone else had tried to reach her. Then she'd disappear again. The cafe's door chimed and she looked up instinctively. A man stepped inside, rain dripping from his dark hair, his eyes scanning the room with the kind of careful attention that made her stomach clench. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive coat that somehow looked casual on him, mid-30s maybe. Sharp features, the kind of face that cameras loved and people remembered. His gaze swept past her, then came back. Stopped. Alessia's heart kicked into overdrive. She reached for her backpack, ready to bolt for the back exit, but the man just nodded slightly, a stranger's acknowledgement, and moved to the counter to order. She watched him from the corner of her eye, trying to decide if she was being paranoid or if her instincts were actually keeping her alive. Probably both. She gave it 5 minutes, watching him collect his coffee and settle at a table near the window, before she stood and headed for the restroom. The back exit was right past it, leading into another alley, another escape route. She'd mapped this whole neighborhood in her first week here, memorizing exits and safe spots and places to hide. The restroom was empty, small and dimly lit. Alessia locked the door and leaned against it, closing her eyes, trying to slow her breathing. This was her life now. Jumping at shadows, running from strangers, sleeping in cheap hostels, and changing neighborhoods every few days because staying still meant being found. She wondered, not for the first time, if she'd made a mistake. If maybe her father was right, and this was all just her being dramatic, immature, unable to understand the bigger picture. Then she remembered his voice through that door. She'll comply. She always does. No, she'd done the right thing. She just had to stay free long enough to figure out what came next. When she came out of the restroom, the cafe felt different, louder, more crowded. She wove through the tables toward the back exit, her backpack clutched tight against her chest. A hand caught her elbow. Alessia spun, her free hand already coming up defensive, and found herself face to face with the man from the window. Up close, he was even more striking. Dark eyes that seemed to see right through her carefully constructed defenses. A mouth that might have been handsome if it wasn't set in such a serious line. "Let go," she said, her voice harder than she felt. "You're being followed," he said quietly, his accent placing him somewhere between British precision and American ease. "3 men. They came in right after you went to the restroom." Alessia's blood went cold. She glanced past him and saw them, 2 by the door, 1 near the counter. Dark suits, serious faces. Her father's men, or men like them. She'd been too careful. She'd watched the door. How had they— "The rain," the stranger said, reading her thoughts. "You were focused on people coming in from the street. They were already inside, waiting." "Who are you?" "Someone who can help you, or you can take your chances with them." He released her elbow but didn't step back. "Your choice. But make it fast." Alessia looked at the men again. One of them was already moving toward her, his hand reaching inside his jacket. She thought about running, about fighting, about all the self-defense classes her father had insisted she take. For safety, he'd said, never mentioning that the greatest threat might come from him. "Okay," she said. "Help me." The stranger took her hand, his grip firm, calloused, and pulled her toward the kitchen. "Stay close, don't look back. And whatever happens next, trust me." Trust. The word almost made her laugh. She didn't trust anyone anymore. But she followed him anyway, because the alternative was going back to Geneva in the back of a car, her freedom over before it had really begun. The kitchen was chaos, steam and shouting, and the clash of pots and pans. The stranger moved through it like he owned the place, nodding at a cook who barely glanced up from his grill. They burst through a service door into the alley behind the cafe, the rain still coming down hard, the sound of it drowning out everything else. "This way." He didn't let go of her hand. They ran through a maze of alleys and side streets, her lungs burning, her legs screaming. Behind them, she heard shouting, her father's men, closing the distance. The stranger yanked her around a corner, then another, moving with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where he was going. He pulled her into a narrow gap between 2 buildings, barely wide enough for them to stand side by side. The space was dark, sheltered from the rain by overlapping balconies above. He pressed her against the wall, his body blocking her from view, his hand covering her mouth before she could protest. Footsteps pounded past, voices calling in German and French, coordinating, searching. The stranger's hand stayed over her mouth, his eyes locked on hers, silently telling her to stay quiet, stay still, stay hidden. She could feel his heart beating against her shoulder, steady, calm, like this was just another Tuesday for him. The voices faded. The footsteps moved away. But he didn't move, didn't release her, like he was counting seconds in his head, making sure they were really gone. Finally, he stepped back. "You okay?" Alessia nodded, not trusting her voice. Her hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. "They'll sweep the area," he said, glancing out at the alley. "We need to move again. I have a place. Safe. 2 blocks from here." "I don't know you." "No, but you don't have a lot of options right now." He said it without judgment, just fact. She hated that he was right. "What do you want?" "To get you somewhere dry. After that we can talk." He held out his hand. "I'm Luca." She stared at his hand, every instinct screaming at her not to trust this, Not to follow a stranger to a secondary location, not to make herself even more vulnerable than she already was. But those men were still out there. Her father was still hunting her, and this man, Luca, had just saved her life. "Alessia," she said, and took his hand. Luca's safe place turned out to be a third-floor apartment in El Raval, accessed through a nondescript door wedged between a tattoo parlor and a closed-down pharmacy. The building was old, the kind of old that came with personality: cracked tile floors, wrought iron railings, walls that had seen generations come and go. He led her up the narrow stairs, still holding her hand like he was afraid she'd bolt. Maybe he was right to worry. She was thinking about it. The apartment was small but clean. Exposed brick walls, minimalist furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the rain-soaked street. A kitchen that was really just a counter with a sink and a hot plate. A door that probably led to a bedroom. Books stacked everywhere. Novels in 3 languages, art books, philosophy, history. "Bathroom's through there," Luca said, gesturing. "There are towels. I'll make coffee." Alessia stood in the middle of the room, dripping onto his floor, trying to process everything that had just happened. "You live here?" "Sometimes. I move around a lot." "Why?" "Work." He shrugged out of his wet coat and hung it on a hook by the door. Underneath, he wore a black sweater and jeans, both expensive, both understated. "You should get out of those wet clothes. I can throw them in the dryer." She hugged her backpack tighter. "I'm fine." "You're shivering." "I said I'm fine." Luca studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Coffee, then. Black? Milk? Sugar?" "Black." She didn't move. He went to the kitchen, filled a kettle, set it on the hot plate. His movements were efficient, practiced, like he'd done this 100 times, like rescuing strangers from armed men was just part of his routine. Alessia stayed by the door, ready to run if she needed to. "How did you know I was being followed?" "I'm observant." "That's not an answer." "It's the one you're getting right now." He pulled 2 mugs from a cabinet. "Sit down. You look like you're about to collapse." She didn't sit. "What do you want from me?" Luca turned to face her fully, leaning against the counter, his expression unreadable. "Nothing. I saw someone in trouble. I helped. That's it." "Nobody helps for nothing." "Maybe I'm nobody then." The kettle started to whistle. He turned back to it, poured water over coffee grounds in a French press, the smell filling the small apartment. Alessia watched him, trying to read him, trying to figure out his angle. Everyone had an angle. "Those men," Luca said, pressing down the plunger. "They work for someone important?" She didn't answer. "You don't have to tell me, but if they're willing to send 3 guys in the middle of the day to grab you off the street, whoever's looking for you has resources. Money, reach." He poured coffee into both mugs, brought one to her. "That means this isn't over." Alessia took the mug, her fingers wrapping around the warm ceramic. "I know. Do you have somewhere to go? Someone who can help?" "No." "Family?" "They're the problem." Luca nodded, like that made perfect sense to him. "Then you need a plan. Hiding is temporary. Eventually, someone with resources finds everyone." "I've been doing okay so far." "You got made in 3 weeks. In a city of millions. That's not okay, that's lucky." He sipped his coffee, watching her over the rim of his mug. "Lucky runs out." She wanted to argue, but he was right. She'd been careful, changing hostels, staying off social media, using cash, avoiding cameras, but her father had still found her, or gotten close enough that it didn't matter. "What would you suggest?" she asked, hating the tremor in her voice. "Depends on what you want. If you want to disappear, actually disappear, I can help with that. New identity, new city, new life, it's expensive, but it's effective. And if I don't want to disappear, then you need leverage, something that makes you too valuable or too dangerous to chase." Luca set down his mug. "But that requires knowing who you're dealing with, what they want, why they want it." Alessia looked down at her coffee. Steam rose from the surface, distorting her reflection. "My father wants me to marry someone. A business arrangement. I'm supposed to seal the deal, and you don't want to. I don't even know who he is. My father picked him. Negotiated terms, probably signed contracts. I'm just the delivery mechanism." "So you ran." "So I ran." She met his eyes. You think that was stupid? I think it was brave. Stupid would be going back. Something in her chest loosened slightly. I can't afford expensive. I have some money, but not enough for a new identity. Then we find you leverage. We? Lucas smiled for the first time, and it transformed his face completely. I don't usually rescue people and then abandon them in my apartment. Bad for karma. You believe in karma? I believe in finishing what I start. Alicia took a sip of her coffee. It was good, strong and bitter, and exactly what she needed. Why are you really helping me? Maybe I don't like bullies. Maybe I've got nothing better to do. Maybe I like the way you argue even when you're terrified. He picked up his mug again. Does it matter? It should have. It should have mattered a lot, but she was exhausted, scared, and out of options. And this stranger, Luca, felt like the first solid ground she'd found in weeks. Okay, she said, help me. They talked for hours, the rain still drumming against the windows, the afternoon fading into evening. Luca made more coffee, then switched to wine when the coffee stopped working. Alicia found herself telling him things she hadn't told anyone, about her childhood in Geneva, about her father's empire, about the crushing weight of expectations, and the suffocating sense that her life was never really hers. Luca listened without judgment, asking questions that cut right to the heart of things. He had a way of making her feel heard without making her feel exposed. It was disarming, dangerous. Your father, he said, refilling her wine glass. What's his name? Marco Varelli. If the name meant anything to Luca, he didn't show it. And the man you're supposed to marry? I don't know. My father never told me his name, just that he's American, powerful. Someone my father needs for his business. What kind of business? Alessia hesitated. Import-export, officially. And unofficially? The kind of business where people don't ask too many questions. She took a long drink of wine. I was never supposed to know the details. Women in my family don't get involved in operations. We're for decoration, for deals, for continuing the bloodline. That's archaic. That's my family. She set down her glass. I thought if I was good enough, smart enough, useful enough, maybe he'd see me differently. Maybe he'd let me be part of it for real. But I was just another asset, valuable only for what I could be traded for. Luca was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm out now. Are you? The question hung in the air between them. Alessia wanted to say yes, wanted to believe it, but those men in the cafe proved otherwise. Her father didn't let go of assets easily. I will be, she said, one way or another. Luca stood, walked to the window, looked out at the city below. Lights were coming on across Barcelona, turning the rain into streaks of gold and silver. I need to make some calls, find out how deep this goes, how many people your father has looking for you. How would you find that out? I know people who know other people. He turned back to her. But I need you to trust me, which I know is asking a lot. It is. Then don't trust me. Trust yourself. You've kept yourself alive this long. Keep doing that. If anything I do feels wrong, say so. Alessia studied him, this man who'd appeared out of nowhere and turned her worst day into something almost bearable. I will. Good. He pulled out his phone. There's food in the kitchen. Help yourself. I'll be in the other room. He disappeared through the bedroom door, closing it behind him. Alessia sat alone in the living room, listening to the muffled sound of his voice through the wall, trying to decide if she was being saved or if she was walking into a different kind of trap. Her phone, still powered off, sat in her pocket like a lead weight. She pulled it out, stared at it, then made a decision. She turned it on. Messages flooded in, missed calls, voicemails, all from her father, from his assistants, from numbers she didn't recognize. She scrolled through them, her jaw tight, until she found one from a contact she'd almost forgotten about. Julia. Where are you? Your father came to my apartment. He's looking for you everywhere. Be careful. Julia, her roommate from university. One of the few people who'd ever treated her like a person instead of a Virelli. Alessia typed back quickly. I'm okay. Don't tell him anything. I'll explain later. She was about to power down again when another message came through. Not from her father, from an unknown number. Stop running. This is for your own good. The wedding is in 6 weeks. You will be there. 6 weeks. They'd set a date. Without her. Rage flared through her, hot and sharp. She wanted to throw the phone across the room, wanted to scream, wanted to find her father and make him understand that she was not a thing to be bought and sold. Instead, she deleted the message and turned off the phone. Luca emerged from the bedroom a few minutes later, his expression grim. "We have a problem." "Just one?" "Your father has connections I didn't expect. He's not just import-export. He's connected to some serious organizations. The kind that don't stop looking just because someone crosses a border." Alessia's stomach dropped. "How serious?" "Serious enough that getting you a new identity might not be enough. They have facial recognition access, informants in most major cities. If you surface anywhere in Europe, they'll find you." Luca sat down across from her. "We need to think bigger." "Like what?" "Like making you someone they can't touch, someone with protection of your own." "I don't have that kind of money." "Not money. Information." Luca leaned forward. "You grew up in that house. You know things your father wouldn't want public. You want me to blackmail my own father. I want you to survive. And right now, the only way I see that happening is if you make yourself too dangerous to eliminate." Alicia's hands were shaking again. "I can't. If I cross him like that..." "He's already crossed you. He sold you to a stranger. He sent men to drag you back. What line are you protecting?" Luca's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it might be necessary." She thought about the message, about the wedding in 6 weeks, about spending the rest of her life as someone's transaction. "I need time to think." "You don't have time. Those men know you were in that cafe. They'll be tracking every camera, every hostel, every credit card swipe. By tomorrow, they'll have narrowed down your location to a few blocks. By the day after, they'll have this address." "How would they—" "Because I helped you, which means I'm on their radar now too." Luca didn't sound worried, just matter of fact. "So we either move fast or we both disappear, and I'm not much for disappearing." Alessia looked at him, really looked at him, at the calm confidence that seemed to radiate from him, at the way he'd taken control of a chaotic situation without even breaking stride, at the books on his shelves and the scars on his knuckles and the expensive watch on his wrist that he wore like it was worthless. "Who are you really?" she asked. Luca smiled that transforming smile again. "I told you, nobody." Nobody doesn't have contacts who can track international criminal organizations. Nobody doesn't live in 3 cities. Nobody doesn't move like they've been trained for situations like this. Fair enough. He stood, walked to the window again, his silhouette backlit by the city lights. "Let's just say I've been on both sides of deals like the one your father's trying to make. And I've learned that the only way to win is to change the game." "That's not an answer. It's the one you're getting tonight." He turned back to her. "You want to know who I am? I'm the person standing between you and a life you don't want. That's all that matters right now." Alessia wanted to push harder, wanted to demand real answers, but exhaustion was crashing over her like a wave. She'd been running on adrenaline for weeks, and it was finally catching up. "I need to sleep," she said. "Bedroom's yours. I'll take the couch." "That's your bed. And you're my guest. I'm not going to make you sleep on the couch after the day you've had." Luca grabbed a blanket from a closet. "We'll figure everything else out in the morning. For tonight, just rest." Alessia stood, grabbed her backpack, headed for the bedroom. At the door, she paused. "Luca?" "Yeah? Thank you for helping me, even if I don't understand why." "You're welcome, even though you don't trust me yet." "I don't trust anyone." "Smart. Keep it that way." He settled onto the couch, pulling the blanket over himself. "Door locks from the inside. Use it if it makes you feel safer." She did lock it. Then she sat on the edge of the bed, a real bed, soft and clean, and let herself feel the weight of everything that had happened. The chase, the escape, the stranger who'd become her only ally. She should have been more scared. She should have been planning her next move, her next escape. But instead she found herself thinking about the way Luca had looked at her, like she was a person, like she mattered, like she was worth saving. It had been a long time since anyone had looked at her that way. Alessia lay back on the bed, still fully clothed, and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, she'd figure out what to do about her father, about the wedding, about the life she was trying to leave behind. Tonight, she just needed to breathe. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of something cooking. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The cafe, the chase, Luca. Alessia sat up, her body stiff from sleeping in her clothes. Her backpack sat where she'd left it, untouched. The door was still locked from the inside. She could hear movement in the other room, the sound of a pan sizzling, water running. She unlocked the door and stepped out. Luca stood at the kitchen counter, cooking eggs toast, already waiting on a plate. He was wearing different clothes, gray t-shirt, black pants, his hair still wet from a shower. "Morning," he said, not looking up from the pan. "Hope you're hungry." "I am, actually." She walked over, accepted the plate he handed her. "You didn't have to do this. I was making breakfast anyway. Figured you could use some real food." He plated his own eggs, grabbed the toast, gestured to the small table by the window. "Sit." They ate in comfortable silence, the morning sun warming the apartment. Alessia couldn't remember the last time she'd had a meal that wasn't grabbed from a convenience store or eaten standing up in a hostel kitchen. This felt almost normal, almost like a life. "I made some calls this morning," Luca said, pushing his empty plate aside. "Your father has teams in Madrid, Lisbon, and Paris. They're coordinating, sharing information. They know you're in Barcelona, but they don't know exactly where yet." Yet. Which gives us maybe 48 hours to make a move. He pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. "This is the man you're supposed to marry." Alessia looked at the screen. The man in the photo was handsome in a cold, calculated way. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, mid-30s, American features, the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers or corporate boardrooms. He stood in front of what looked like a New York skyline, hands in his pockets, looking at the camera like he owned it. Who is he? His name is Luca Devereaux, American, old money, new power, runs a network that makes your father's operation look like a corner store. Luca's voice was carefully neutral. He's been expanding into Europe, needs local connections. Your father needs protection and legitimacy in the States. You're the bridge. Alessia stared at the photo, her appetite gone. He knows about this? About me? He agreed to the arrangement. Whether he knows you ran, I'm not sure yet. And if he does? Then he's probably helping your father look for you. Luca took back the phone, pocketed it. But there's something else, something that doesn't add up. What? Your father's desperate, too desperate. He's burning resources, calling in favors, making noise. That's not how you handle a runaway daughter. That's how you handle a crisis. Luca leaned back in his chair. I think there's more to this marriage than just business. I think your father needs this deal to survive. Alessia's mind raced. He's in trouble. That'd be my guess, which means you have more leverage than you thought. If this marriage doesn't happen, something collapses, something big. So what do I do? We find out what that something is, and we use it to negotiate your freedom. Luca stood, started clearing the plates. But first, we need to get you somewhere safer. This place was a stopgap. We need something more permanent. Where? I have a friend. Owes me a favor. Has a place in Gracia, off the grid, not connected to any of my usual networks. We can hole up there for a few days while we dig into your father's business. Alessia helped him clean up, her mind spinning. And then what? Even if we find something, even if we get leverage, my father isn't just going to let me walk away. Men like him don't lose. Men like him lose all the time. They just make sure nobody talks about it. Luca dried his hands, looked at her directly. Question is, are you willing to make him lose? Because this gets ugly, it gets personal, and there's no going back once we start. She thought about the message from last night, about the wedding in 6 weeks, about the photo of Luca Devereaux, the man she'd never met, the man who'd apparently agreed to take her as part of a business deal like she was office furniture. I'm willing, she said. Then let's get started. They left the apartment an hour later, Alessia wearing different clothes, jeans and a jacket Luca had somehow procured while she slept. Her hair was tied back, sunglasses hiding her eyes. She looked different enough that a casual observer might not recognize her from the cafe yesterday. Luca led her through a different route this time, avoiding main streets, sticking to residential areas where cameras were sparse and tourists were few. He moved with purpose, but not urgency, like someone who knew exactly where he was going, but wasn't in any rush to get there. Tell me about Devereaux, Alessia said as they walked. What kind of operation does he run? The kind that doesn't leave traces. Money laundering, mostly. Art, real estate, cryptocurrency. He's got political connections in 6 countries. Owns judges. Has senators on his payroll. Your father's legitimate by comparison. And he wants to marry me. He wants your father's European network. You just happen to come with it. The casual brutality of it stung, even though she'd already known. Has he ever met me? Seen a photo? I'd assume so. Your father wouldn't negotiate blind. So somewhere he's got a file on me. My life reduced to data points and transaction value. Luca glanced at her. Probably. But that's all he knows. The data. He doesn't know you're stubborn, doesn't know you're smart enough to run, doesn't know you're brave enough to fight back. That's your advantage. How is that an advantage? Because he'll underestimate you, and people who underestimate their opponents always lose. They turned down a narrow street lined with colorful buildings, laundry hanging from balconies, the smell of cooking drifting from open windows. Luca stopped in front of a blue door, pulled out a key, let them inside. The apartment was small but brighter than the last one. Large windows, plants everywhere, bookshelves lining the walls. It felt lived in, loved, personal. Your friend has good taste, Alessia said. She does. Luca set down the bags he'd been carrying, supplies he'd grabbed while she was getting dressed. Make yourself comfortable. I need to set up a secure connection, start pulling information on your father's finances. I can help with that. You know his accounts? I've seen them. He used to have me review quarterly reports. Thought it was educational. Alessia pulled out her laptop from her backpack. I've got his access codes memorized. At least the ones from 6 months ago. Luca stared at her. You've been carrying that information in your head this whole time. Old habit. My father always said paper trails were dangerous. Taught me to remember numbers instead of writing them down. That's incredibly useful and incredibly reckless. Story of my life. She opened the laptop, powered it up. Where do we start? They worked through the afternoon, Alicia navigating her father's financial networks while Luca traced connections and compiled data. The more they dug, the clearer the picture became. Marco Varelli was hemorrhaging money, bad investments in Eastern Europe, failed deals in Asia, debts piling up with organizations that didn't accept excuses. And in the middle of it all, the deal with Luca Devereaux, a marriage that came with a massive cash injection, political protection, and access to markets her father desperately needed. He's drowning, Alicia said, staring at the numbers on her screen. Without this marriage, he's bankrupt within a year, maybe less. Which means you're not just leverage, you're his life raft. So if I don't marry Devereaux, your father loses everything. His business, his reputation, probably his life, if his creditors decide he's not worth keeping alive. Alessia sat back, her head spinning. I should feel sorry for him. Should you? He's my father. He's also the man who sold you to a stranger to save himself. Luca closed his own laptop. Feeling sorry for him is optional. Survival isn't. She knew he was right, but part of her, the part that was still that little girl trying to earn her father's love, felt the weight of this. If she walked away, she'd be killing him, slowly maybe, but killing him nonetheless. What would you do? She asked. If you were me. Luca was quiet for a long moment. I'd remember that he made his choices, and now you get to make yours. He stood, walked to the window. But I'm not you, and I don't have 26 years of history weighing on my decisions. Alessia joined him at the window. Below the street was alive with people coming home from work, children playing, life happening in all its messy, beautiful normalcy. She wanted that, wanted normal, wanted a life that was hers. I can't save him, she said quietly. No, you can't. And I can't marry a man I've never met just to keep him afloat. No, you can't do that either. So what do I do? Luca turned to face her. You save yourself. And you stop apologizing for it. She met his eyes, saw understanding there, saw support, saw something else she couldn't quite name. Why are you doing this? Really? Because nobody helped me when I needed it. and I've spent a long time wishing someone had." His voice was rough, honest. "Maybe if I help you, it balances the scales a little." "That's not how scales work." "Then maybe I'm just selfish. Maybe I like being the person who helps instead of the person who needs it." He smiled slightly. "Or maybe I just can't stand bullies. Pick whichever answer makes you feel better." Alessia found herself smiling back. "What if I pick all three?" "Then you're smarter than I gave you credit for." The moment stretched between them, comfortable and charged all at once. Alessia felt something shift inside her. Not trust exactly, but the beginning of it. The possibility of it. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. The burner this time, not her real one. She pulled it out, frowned at the screen. "What is it?" Luca asked. "A message. From Julia." She opened it, read it twice, her blood turning cold. "She says my father's getting desperate. He's threatening people I know, trying to find anyone who might help me." "Is Julia safe?" "I don't know. She didn't say." Alessia typed back quickly. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" The response came immediately. "I'm fine, but be careful. He's not himself anymore. I've never seen him like this." Luca read over her shoulder. "Your friend's right. Desperate men make mistakes, but they also get dangerous. I need to warn the others, people from university, from work, anyone he might target." "You can't. The moment you reach out, you create a trail, connections he can follow back to you." "So I just let him hurt them?" "He won't hurt them. He needs them to think you might come back. He'll threaten, but he won't follow through. Not yet." Luca put a hand on her shoulder. "I know it's hard, but you have to stay focused. If you break cover now, everything we've done is wasted." Alicia wanted to argue, wanted to fight, but she knew he was right. Every move she made put her at risk. Every connection was a vulnerability. She powered down the burner phone and set it aside. "This is who I am now, someone who can't even protect her friends." "This is who you are right now, not forever." Luca's hand was still on her shoulder, warm and steady. "We're going to fix this. We're going to find a way to get you free and keep the people you care about safe. But it takes time." "How much time?" "As much as we need." He squeezed her shoulder gently, then let go. "For now, let's keep digging. The more we know about your father's situation, the better position we're in to negotiate." They worked into the evening, the apartment growing dark around them, lit only by the glow of their laptop screens. Alessia felt herself falling into the rhythm of it. The research, the analysis, the slow building of a case against her own father. It should have felt wrong. Instead, it felt like taking control. Around midnight, Luca ordered food, Thai delivery, paid for in cash, and they ate while comparing notes. The picture was damning. Her father had made deals he couldn't keep, promised things he couldn't deliver, borrowed from people who didn't forgive debts. The marriage to Devereaux was his last play. Without it, he had nothing. "Question," Alicia said, setting down her pad thai. "If Devereaux is as powerful as you say, why does he need my father at all? Why not just take the European network by force?" "Because force is expensive and obvious. Devereaux's whole operation is built on discretion. A marriage is cleaner, more legitimate." Luca finished his noodles, pushed the container aside. "Plus, your father has relationships Devereaux can't easily replicate. Judges, politicians, shipping companies. It's worth more intact than destroyed. So he gets everything he wants, and I'm just the ribbon on the package. That was the plan, but plans change. Because I ran." "Because you ran." Luca smiled. "And because you're more trouble than either of them anticipated." Alessia felt something warm bloom in her chest. Pride, maybe, or just the satisfaction of finally being seen as something more than a transaction. "I want to meet him. Devereaux." Luca's smile faded. "That's a bad idea." "Why?" "He's part of this. I should know who I'm up against." "You're not up against him. You're avoiding him." "Same thing. And if I'm going to negotiate my way out of this, I need to understand who he is, what he wants, what he's willing to trade." She closed her laptop. "Can you set it up?" "Even if I could, it'd be dangerous. He might grab you, deliver you to your father, collect his end of the deal." "Then make sure that doesn't happen. Come with me. Protect me like you did yesterday." Alicia leaned forward. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of running from people I've never even met. I want to look this man in the eye and tell him I'm not a commodity. Luca studied her for a long moment. You're serious? Completely. It's reckless. So is trusting a stranger I met in a cafe yesterday, but here we are. He laughed at that. A real laugh, surprised and genuine. Fair point. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts, stopped on one. I can probably get you a meeting, but it'll have to be on neutral ground, public, lots of witnesses. Whatever it takes. Luca made the call, spoke in low tones, negotiated terms Alessia couldn't quite hear. When he hung up, his expression was grim. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. There's a gallery opening in Elborn. He'll be there. I can get you in. And then? And then you get 5 minutes to make your case. After that, we leave. No arguments, no delays. He looked at her seriously. This is dangerous, Alicia. If it goes wrong, it won't. Not with you there. You don't know that. No, but I trust you anyway. The words surprised her as much as they seemed to surprise him. But they were true. Somewhere in the last 24 hours, Luca had become the one solid thing in her collapsing world. And whatever happened next, she needed him to know that mattered. Okay, Luca said softly. Tomorrow, we meet Devereaux. Tomorrow, Alessia agreed. And despite everything, despite the danger, despite the fear, despite the chaos of her father's empire crashing down around her, she felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Alessia barely slept that night. She lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at shadows shifting across the ceiling, her mind running through 100 different scenarios of how the meeting with Devereaux might go. In some versions, she walked away free. In others, she didn't walk away at all. She finally gave up around 5 in the morning and found Luca already awake, sitting at the small kitchen table with his laptop open and a cup of coffee going cold beside him. He looked up when she emerged from the bedroom, his expression unreadable in the pre-dawn light. Couldn't sleep either? She asked. I don't sleep much anyway. He gestured to the coffee pot. Help yourself. Alessia poured a cup and joined him at the table. His screen showed what looked like floor plans. The gallery, she realized. He'd been mapping it out, planning exits, identifying risks. You're being very careful about this, she observed. I'm being smart about this. There's a difference. Luca zoomed in on one section of the plans. 3 exits, main entrance, service door in the back, emergency exit through the storage area. We go in through the main, position ourselves near the service door. If anything feels wrong, we leave immediately. What counts as wrong? My gut. He looked at her directly. I mean it, Alessia. If I say we leave, no arguments. I understand. Do you? Because you've got this look in your eyes like you're planning to do something stupid. I'm planning to take control of my life. If that's stupid, then yes. Luca closed his laptop with a sigh. Control is an illusion, especially when you're walking into a room with someone who has more resources, more power, and more reasons to want you under his thumb than anyone else on the planet. Then why are we doing this? Because you asked, and because sometimes the illusion is all you've got. He stood, refilled his coffee. But I need you to be clear-headed about what you're walking into. Devereaux isn't your father. He's not going to get emotional. He's not going to make mistakes because he's desperate. He's going to be calm, rational, and completely willing to do whatever serves his interests. Including handing me over to my father? If that's the smart play, yes. Alessia wrapped her hands around her mug, feeling the warmth seep into her fingers. You've met him before, haven't you? Luca didn't answer right away. He stood at the window watching the city wake up, the sky turning from black to gray to pale gold. Once, a few years ago. We had overlapping interests in a deal. It didn't end well. For him or for you? For both of us. Which is why he'll remember me, and why this meeting might be more complicated than you're expecting. Is he dangerous? Everyone in this world is dangerous. The question is whether they have a reason to hurt you. Luca turned back to face her. Right now, Devereaux wants you intact, wants the marriage to happen so he gets what your father promised. As long as that's true, you're valuable. But the second you stop being valuable, I become a problem. Exactly. They sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee, watching the morning light fill the apartment, Alessia found herself studying Luca in that soft dawn glow, the sharp line of his jaw, the way his eyes tracked movement on the street below like he was always calculating threats, the tension in his shoulders that never quite released. He carried himself like someone who'd learned not to relax, not to trust, not to believe in safety. "What happened to you?" she asked quietly. "To make you like this?" "Like what?" "Like someone who expects everything to go wrong." Luca smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I learned from experience. Things usually do go wrong." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I'm giving right now." He checked his watch. "We've got 8 hours until the meeting. You should try to rest. You'll need to be sharp." "I can't rest. I'm too wired." "Then eat something, shower, do normal things. Pretend you're just going to a gallery opening instead of walking into a negotiation with a man who thinks he owns you." "Does pretending help?" "Sometimes. Sometimes it's all that keeps you sane." Alessia took his advice, showered, ate the breakfast he made, went through the motions of normalcy even though nothing about this felt normal. Luca disappeared into the bedroom for a while, emerged wearing a suit that transformed him completely. He looked expensive now. Powerful. Like someone who belonged in the same rooms as men like Devereaux. "You clean up well," she said. "So do you." She glanced down at herself. The dress Luca had somehow acquired, simple and black and elegant. It fit perfectly, which should have been concerning, but at this point she'd stopped questioning his resources. "Where did this come from?" "I know a guy. He's good with sizes." "That's not creepy at all." "You want creepy or you want appropriate attire for a gallery opening?" "Both, apparently." She smoothed the fabric, feeling strange in it. She'd spent weeks in jeans and hoodies, blending in, staying invisible. This felt exposed, vulnerable. Luca seemed to read her discomfort. "You look fine. Better than fine. You look like someone who belongs there." "I don't belong anywhere right now." "Then fake it. That's what everyone else in that room will be doing." They took a taxi to Elborn, arriving 20 minutes early. Luca wanted time to scout the area to make sure there were no surprises waiting. The gallery was in a converted warehouse, all exposed brick and industrial lighting, the kind of place that charged obscene amounts for wine and called it art appreciation. People were already filtering in, Barcelona's elite, art collectors, socialites, the kind of crowd Alessia had grown up around and spent the last few weeks avoiding. She felt Luca's hand on her lower back, steadying, grounding. "Stay close," he murmured. "And remember, 5 minutes, then we're gone." Boop. They entered through the main doors. The gallery was stunning in that deliberate way expensive spaces always were. White walls, dramatic lighting, abstract sculptures that probably cost more than most people's homes. Waiters circulated with champagne. A string quartet played in one corner. Everything was beautiful and hollow and exactly what Alicia had run from. "He's here," Luca said quietly. 10 o'clock, blue suit. Alessia followed his gaze and found Luca Devereaux standing near a sculpture that looked like twisted metal and broken dreams. He was taller than she'd expected from the photo, his presence commanding even in a room full of people trying to command attention. He was speaking to an older woman, nodding politely, but his eyes were scanning the crowd. And then those eyes found her. The recognition was instant. He'd seen photos, just like she had. For a moment, they just stared at each other across the gallery. The man who thought he'd bought her, and the woman who'd run. Devereaux excused himself from the older woman and started walking toward them. His movements were deliberate, unhurried, like he had all the time in the world. Luca's hand pressed slightly harder against her back. "Breathe," he whispered. She breathed. Devereaux stopped a few feet away, his gaze moving from Alicia to Luca and back again. Up close, he was even more striking, the kind of handsome that came with money and power and genetics that won lotteries. But his eyes were cold, calculating. "Miss Varelli," he said, his voice smooth and American and completely neutral. "This is unexpected." "Mr. Devereaux," her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I thought it was time we met." "Indeed." His attention shifted to Luca. "And you brought protection. Interesting choice." "Mr. Castellano," Luca said, using a name Alessia had never heard before. "It's been a while." "Not long enough." But Devereaux's tone was almost pleasant. I see you've diversified into babysitting. I see you've diversified into purchasing people. We all have our hobbies. The air between them crackled with tension. Alessia could feel old history there, old wounds, old scores unsettled. She stepped forward slightly, breaking the spell. I need to talk to you, she said to Devereaux. Privately. I don't think that's wise, Luca said immediately. I didn't ask what you thought. She kept her eyes on Devereaux. 5 minutes. That's all I need. Devereaux studied her with those cold eyes, calculating odds, weighing risks. There's a private viewing room upstairs. We can talk there. Your guard dog can wait outside. He comes with me or there's no conversation. Afraid I'll kidnap you? Drag you back to your father in chains? Devereaux smiled, and it was worse than his cold stare. Miss Varelli, if I wanted to do that, I would have already done it. The fact that you're standing here, free and remarkably well-dressed for someone on the run, suggests I'm willing to hear what you have to say. Then let's go. Alicia started toward the stairs before Luca could argue. The private viewing room was smaller, quieter, dominated by a single massive painting that looked like a scream frozen in oil and canvas. Devereaux closed the door behind them, leaving the three of them in tense proximity. So, he said, leaning against a wall with studied casualness, you ran. Your father is having a breakdown. And now you're here trying to negotiate. Did I miss anything? You missed the part where I'm not a commodity, Alessia said, where I get a say in my own life. Noble, naive, but noble. Devereaux pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, showed it to her. Your father has offered an additional $20 million for your safe return. That's on top of what we already agreed to. You're worth quite a lot, apparently. Alessia's stomach turned. And are you planning to collect? That depends on what you're offering instead. My cooperation. Willingly. The lie came easily, born from weeks of survival. But not as his pawn, as my own person, with my own terms. Devereaux's eyebrow rose. You want to renegotiate our arrangement. I want to actually negotiate it. You and my father made a deal without me. That's not a marriage. That's a transaction. All marriages are transactions, Miss Varelli. Some people are just more honest about it. Fine. Then let's be honest. Alessia stepped closer, channeling every ounce of confidence she didn't feel. You need my father's network. I understand that. But right now, my father is desperate, sloppy, making mistakes. If you tie yourself to him through this marriage, you inherit those mistakes. You inherit his debts, his enemies, his problems. I'm aware of his financial situation. Are you aware he's 3 months from bankruptcy? That his creditors include organizations that don't accept I owe us? She was guessing now, extrapolating from the data she and Luca had compiled, but Devereaux's expression shifted slightly. If you marry me now, you're not getting an alliance. You're getting a liability. Devereaux looked at Luca. You've been doing your homework. She's smart, Luca said. Try to keep up. So what do you propose? Devereaux asked Alessia. I walk away, lose my access to European markets, let your father collapse and take half my investment with him? I propose you wait. Let me sort out my father's mess. Clean up his operation. Then, if you still want the alliance, we talk, like adults, with me at the table. And in the meantime? In the meantime, you tell my father I'm considering his offer, that I need time, that I'll contact him when I'm ready. Alessia held his gaze. Buy me space to breathe. That's all I'm asking. Devereaux was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he laughed, a sharp, surprised sound. You have nerve. I'll give you that. Is that a yes? It's an acknowledgement that you're more interesting than your father led me to believe. He pushed off the wall, walked to the painting, studied it like it held answers. But you're asking me to lie to a man who's already unstable, to delay a deal that's already costing me money. What do I get in return? Information. I know things about my father's operation that he'd never tell you. Routes, contacts, weaknesses in his structure. Another lie, but delivered with enough confidence that it landed. Help me, and I'll help you actually take control of what you're trying to buy. Tempting, but trust isn't something I extend easily. Then don't trust me. Trust him. She gestured to Luca. You know him. You know he doesn't make stupid moves. If he's helping me, there's a reason. Devereaux turned to Luca. Is that true? Are you vouching for her? I'm standing here, aren't I? Luca's voice was carefully neutral. That should tell you something. It tells me you're either getting soft or you see an angle I don't. Maybe both. Maybe neither. But she's right about one thing. Tying yourself to Marco Varelli right now is a bad investment. Give her time to fix it, and you get what you actually wanted. Not a desperate man's dying empire. Devereaux considered this, his gaze moving between them. Alessia could see him calculating, weighing probabilities, running scenarios. This was a man who didn't make decisions based on emotion. Everything was math. 3 weeks, he said finally. I'll tell your father you've made contact, that you're negotiating terms, that you need time to come around to the idea. That buys you 3 weeks. That's not enough. It's what you're getting. 3 weeks, or I make one phone call and your father's men drag you out of here in front of everyone. Devereaux's voice didn't change, but the threat was unmistakable. And before you get any ideas about running further, understand that I now know what you look like, where you've been, who you're traveling with. If you disappear again, I'll find you. And next time, I won't be this generous. Alessia felt Luca tense beside her, but she kept her expression steady. 3 weeks. And you don't tell him where I am. I don't know where you are. All I know is you showed up at a gallery opening looking remarkably composed for someone who's supposed to be in hiding. Devereaux checked his watch. Your 5 minutes are up. I suggest you leave before someone recognizes you and texts your father. Oh, one more thing, Alessia said. Why did you agree to this marriage in the first place? You could have just bought my father's operation outright. Why go through the performance of a wedding? Devereaux smiled that cold smile again. Because weddings make everything legitimate. They make alliances look like love stories. And in my line of work, appearances matter almost as much as reality. He opened the door. 3 weeks, Miss Varelli. Use them wisely. Luca took her arm and steered her toward the door, but Alessia stopped at the threshold. For what it's worth, I meant what I said. I'm not trying to scam you, I just want a choice. Everyone wants a choice, Devereaux said. Most people don't fight for it. We'll see which kind you are. They left the viewing room and descended the stairs quickly, not running, but not lingering. The gallery felt too bright now, too exposed. Alessia could feel eyes on them, probably just paranoia, but maybe not. Luca's hand stayed on her arm, guiding her toward the service exit he'd identified earlier. They were almost to the door when a man stepped into their path. Tall, broad, with the kind of face that had been rearranged by fists more than once. He looked at Alessia with recognition. Miss Varelli, your father's been looking for you. Luca moved instantly, putting himself between Alessia and the man. She's leaving. You're not stopping her. I don't want trouble. Just want to talk to the lady. She doesn't want to talk to you. The man's hand moved toward his jacket. Luca's moved faster, catching the man's wrist, twisting it with practiced efficiency. The man grunted in pain, and suddenly the quiet gallery erupted into chaos. People turned to stare. Someone screamed. Security started moving their direction. Run, Luca said to Alessia. She ran, out the service door into the alley behind the gallery, her heels clicking against pavement. She heard shouting behind her, scuffling, but she didn't look back. Luca had said run, so she ran. She made it 2 blocks before she realized she had no idea where she was going. The neighborhood was unfamiliar, the streets a maze of identical corners and identical buildings. She ducked into a doorway, her heart hammering, trying to catch her breath and figure out her next move. Footsteps approached. She pressed herself against the door, ready to run again. It's me. Luca appeared, slightly disheveled but otherwise intact. You okay? What happened back there? Security escorted our friend out a different exit. I played innocent bystander. It worked. He took her hand. But we need to move. That guy will call it in. Your father will know you were here within the hour. They walked quickly, Luca navigating them through side streets and residential areas, putting distance between them and the gallery. Alessia's mind was still reeling from the confrontation with Devereaux, from the man who'd recognized her, from how close she'd come to being dragged back. You lied to him, Luca said as they walked, about the information, about cleaning up your father's operation. I know. So what's your actual plan? I have 3 weeks to figure that out. Luca stopped walking, pulled her into a quiet plaza where a fountain burbled and pigeons pecked at cobblestones. Alessia, you can't bluff your way through this. Devereaux isn't stupid. In 3 weeks, he's going to expect results. If you don't deliver, then I'll deal with that when it happens. She sat on the edge of the fountain, suddenly exhausted. I just needed time, space to think, to plan. 3 weeks is better than nothing. 3 weeks goes fast when you're being hunted. I know. She looked up at him. But it went better than expected, didn't it? He could have grabbed me right there. Instead, he gave me a deadline. He gave you rope. Whether you use it to pull yourself up or hang yourself is still an open question. Alessia couldn't argue with that. She stared at the fountain, watching water cascade over stone, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on her. 3 weeks, 21 days. It had sounded like a lot in that viewing room. Now it felt like nothing at all. What did he mean, she asked, when he called you Castellano? That's not your name. Luca sat beside her on the fountain's edge. It's a name I used to use, before. Before what? Before I decided that life wasn't for me. You're being cryptic again. I'm being careful. There are things about my past that don't matter to your situation. Things that would just complicate everything if you knew. Or things you're ashamed of. He looked at her sharply. Maybe, but everyone's got things they're ashamed of. That's not unique to me. Devereaux knows you, he doesn't like you, and you clearly have history. Alessia turned to face him fully. If I'm trusting you with my life, I deserve to know who you really are. You know enough. Do I? Or am I just another person you're lying to? The words hung between them, sharp and accusing. Luca's jaw tightened, and for a moment Alessia thought he might get up and walk away. Leave her sitting on this fountain in a strange neighborhood with 3 weeks to solve an impossible problem. Instead, he sighed. Fine. You want the truth? Castellano is my real name, Luca Castellano. I changed it 5 years ago when I walked away from my family's business. A business that looked a lot like what your father does, what Devereaux does. He stared at the fountain. I was good at it, really good. Made a lot of money, hurt a lot of people. And one day I woke up and realized I'd become exactly what I swore I'd never be. So you left. So I left. Took a new name. Tried to build a different life. But the old one keeps finding me. Men like Devereaux don't forget. They don't forgive. And they sure as hell don't let you just walk away clean. Alessia processed this, fitting it together with everything she'd observed about him. The way he moved, the way he planned, the resources he had access to. You were like them. Like my father. Worse, probably. At least your father has the excuse of legacy, of family expectations. I chose it, actively, enthusiastically. Luca looked at her. So yeah, I'm ashamed. And yeah, I'm trying to make up for it by helping you. Selfish reasons, remember? That's not selfish, that's human. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just fooling myself into thinking I can balance the scales by saving one person when I've destroyed so many others. Alessia reached out, took his hand. His fingers were rough, calloused, marked by his past. You saved me. That counts for something. Does it? Or did I just drag you into my mess along with yours? I was already in a mess. You just gave me a chance to fight back. She squeezed his hand. And for what it's worth, I'm glad it was you in that cafe. I'm glad you're the one helping me, even if you're doing it for selfish reasons. Luca's expression softened slightly. You're too trusting for someone on the run. And you're too cynical for someone trying to do the right thing. Maybe we balance each other out. Maybe. They sat in silence for a while, the fountain providing white noise, the city moving around them in its endless rhythm. Alessia felt something shifting between them. Not trust exactly, but understanding, recognition, like they were both broken in compatible ways. So what now? She asked finally. We have 3 weeks. What's the actual plan? We need to figure out what your father's really afraid of. What debt is so bad that he's willing to burn everything to avoid it? Luca stood, pulling her up with him. And we need to do it without tipping him off that we're digging, which means going deeper into his operation than what we found on his public accounts. How do we do that? We get access to his private files, the ones he keeps off the books, the ones that would destroy him if they went public. Those are in Geneva, in his office, behind security that would make a bank jealous. I know, which is why we're not going through the front door. Luca started walking, pulling her along. But first, we need to get you somewhere safe. That man at the gallery definitely reported back. Your father knows you're in Barcelona. He'll flood the zone with people. We need to be somewhere he won't think to look. Where? I'm working on it. They made their way back to the apartment in Gracia through a circuitous route that took twice as long as necessary, but gave them time to make sure they weren't being followed. When they finally arrived, Luca immediately started packing. His laptop, their clothes, essential supplies. We're leaving? Alessia asked. In an hour. I've got a place outside the city. Quiet. Off-grid. We can work from there without worrying about your father's men kicking down the door. For 3 weeks? For as long as it takes. He looked at her seriously. This is going to get harder before it gets easier. You understand that, right? Devereaux bought you time, but he also put a clock on your head. And your father isn't going to just sit around waiting for you to call. I know. And you're still willing to do this? To fight? Alicia thought about her father's voice through that door. About being reduced to a line item in a contract. About the wedding in 6 weeks that had been planned without her consent or knowledge. About every choice that had been taken from her before she was old enough to realize she should have a choice. I'm still willing, she said. Then pack. We leave in 45 minutes. The place outside Barcelona turned out to be a small house in the hills above Sitges, accessible only by a winding dirt road that probably washed out in heavy rain. It was isolated, quiet, surrounded by olive trees and wild rosemary. The house itself was simple. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living area with large windows that looked out over the Mediterranean. A friend's place, Luca explained as they unloaded the car. She's in South America for the next month. Won't mind us staying here. You have a lot of friends with convenient real estate. I've been around, made connections, some of them stuck. He carried their bags inside, set them down in the living room. We'll need to be smart about supplies. The nearest town is 20 minutes away. We can't go often without drawing attention. I can handle isolation. Can you handle 3 weeks of it? With me? In close quarters? He said it lightly, but there was a serious question underneath. Alessia looked around the small house, at the 2 bedrooms, at the shared space they'd be occupying while trying to dismantle her father's empire. I guess we'll find out. They spent the rest of the day settling in, establishing routines, mapping out their plan of attack. Luca had equipment Alessia hadn't seen at the other apartments. Serious hardware, encryption tools, access to databases she didn't even know existed. Wherever he'd come from, whatever he'd been, he still had connections that went deep. As night fell, they made dinner together in the small kitchen, pasta and vegetables from supplies Luca had grabbed on the way. It felt almost domestic, almost normal, except for the laptops on the table and the conversation about breaking into secure servers. Your father's main office server is encrypted, Luca said, twirling pasta on his fork. But I've got a contact who might be able to get us in. Former NSA. Owes me a favor. How many favors do people owe you? Enough to be useful, not enough to retire on. He took a bite, chewed thoughtfully. But even if we get in, we need to know what we're looking for. Your father's operation is big, lots of files, lots of transactions. We can't just download everything and hope for the best. I might know where to start. Alessia set down her fork. There was a deal my father was obsessed with about a year ago, something in Prague. He kept flying out there, having late-night calls, getting increasingly stressed. Then it just stopped. No more trips. No more calls. Like whatever it was had resolved or disappeared. Or went underground. Exactly. If there's something bad enough to make him this desperate, maybe it connects to Prague. Luca pulled out his laptop, started typing. Give me names, companies, anything you remember. Alessia closed her eyes, reaching back through memory. Helix Trading. That was the company. Based in Czech Republic. My father called them partners, but it always sounded wrong, like he was forcing the word. Helix Trading. Luca's fingers flew over the keyboard. Let's see what we can find. They worked through the night, following digital breadcrumbs, piecing together fragments of information. Helix Trading was a shell company, That much was clear. But what it was hiding was harder to determine. The more they dug, the more complicated the picture became. Around 3 in the morning, Luca leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. This is bigger than I thought. How big? Helix Trading is connected to at least 6 other shell companies across Europe, all of them funneling money to the same place, a private equity firm in London called Sterling Crown Capital. I've heard that name. My father mentioned it once, said they were untouchable. They're not untouchable, they're just well connected. British aristocracy fronting for international crime syndicates. The kind of operation that exists in the space between legal and illegal, making sure everything looks legitimate on paper while washing dirty money through high-end real estate and art. Alessia's stomach sank. My father's in bed with them. Deeper than that. Based on these transactions, he's not just working with them. He's dependent on them. They're keeping him afloat. And if they decide to pull the plug, Luca trailed off, but the implication was clear. He collapses completely. Worse, these kinds of organizations don't just let people walk away when they fail. They make examples, violent ones. Alicia stared at the screen, at the web of companies and transactions, at the evidence of her father's desperate gamble with people who didn't forgive mistakes. So what does he owe them? That's what we need to find out. But whatever it is, it's bad enough that marrying you off to Devereaux is his solution, which means he needs Devereaux's money and protection to either pay off Sterling Crown or insulate himself from them. And I'm the price of admission. You were never supposed to know. You were supposed to go along with the wedding, be the dutiful daughter, seal the deal. Luca closed the laptop. But now you do know, and now we can use it. How? We find out exactly what he owes. Exactly what Sterling Crown has on him. And then we decide whether we expose it, use it as leverage, or find another way to neutralize the threat. He stood, stretched. But that's tomorrow's problem. Tonight, we both need sleep. Alessia nodded, but she knew sleep wouldn't come easily. Her mind was racing with implications, with possibilities, with the sheer scope of what they were trying to accomplish. 3 weeks suddenly felt impossible. She retreated to her bedroom, changed into clothes suitable for sleeping, lay on top of the covers staring at the ceiling. Through the wall, she could hear Luca moving around, settling in for the night. She wondered if he slept at all, or if he just lay awake running scenarios like she did. A soft knock on her door. "You okay?" "Can't sleep," she admitted. "Want company?" "Not like that," he added quickly. "Just, sometimes it helps to not be alone with your thoughts." She almost said no, almost maintained the boundary between them. But the truth was, she didn't want to be alone. Not tonight, not with everything spinning out of control. "Okay," she said. Luca came in, sat on the floor with his back against the wall, giving her space. They didn't talk. They just existed in the same room, 2 people who'd been thrown together by circumstance and were now bound by something neither of them could quite name. Eventually, exhaustion won. Alessia felt herself drifting, the sound of the Mediterranean through the window mixing with Luca's steady breathing, creating a rhythm that finally let her rest. When she woke, morning light was streaming through the window and Luca was gone. She found him in the kitchen, making coffee, already back at his laptop. "Morning," he said without looking up. "I've got good news and bad news." "Give me the good news first." "My contact came through. We've got access to your father's server. Limited window, 6 hours starting at midnight tonight, but it should be enough." "And the bad news?" "Your father issued a statement, says you've been kidnapped, that he's offering a reward for information leading to your safe return." Luca turned the laptop around, showed her a news article. "He's gone public, which means every bounty hunter, private investigator, and opportunist in Europe is now looking for you." Alessia read the article, her father's carefully crafted words painting her as a victim, him as the concerned parent. It was brilliant, really. It mobilized resources he didn't have to pay for and made her look like the problem instead of him. "He's smart," she said quietly. "He's desperate." Smart would have been keeping this quiet. Going public means he's running out of options. Luca took back the laptop. "But it also means we can't surface. Not until we've got everything we need to neutralize him." 6 hours at midnight, that's when we make our move? That's when we find out what he's really hiding. and then we decide how to use it. Alessia poured herself coffee, looked out the window at the Mediterranean glittering in the morning sun. Somewhere out there, her father was mounting a campaign to find her. Devereaux was counting down her 3-week deadline. Sterling Crown Capital was probably already calculating what her father's failure would cost them. And here she was, in a house in the hills with a man she barely knew, about to hack into her father's most sensitive files. It should have felt insane. Instead, it felt like the first real choice she'd made in years. "Let's do it," she said. "Tonight, then. We find out what your father's really afraid of." "And then?" Luca smiled. "Then we make him more afraid of you." The hours until midnight crawled by with agonizing slowness. Alessia tried to stay busy, reviewing what they knew about her father's operation, memorizing file structures Luca had sketched out, preparing for the breach, but her mind kept wandering to what they might find. Part of her didn't want to know. Ignorance had been easier, safer, but safety was a luxury she'd given up the moment she ran. Luca spent most of the day on his laptop, coordinating with his contact, running test protocols, making sure everything would work when the window opened. He worked with intense focus, barely speaking, his fingers moving across the keyboard like a pianist performing a complicated piece from memory. Around 7, he looked up and caught her staring. "What?" "Nothing, just wondering how you learned to do all this." "Trial and error, mostly error." He closed the laptop. "When I was working for my family, I had to understand the systems we were exploiting. Banks, corporations, government databases. You can't steal from something if you don't know how it works. And now you use those skills for good." "I use them to survive. Sometimes that looks like good." He stood, stretched. "We should eat something. It's going to be a long night." They made dinner together again, this time a simple risotto, the repetitive stirring giving Alessia's hands something to do while her mind spun. Luca was quiet, focused, occasionally checking his watch like he was counting down to something inevitable. "Are you nervous?" she asked. "About the breach?" "No, I've done this 100 times." "About what we might find?" He paused mid-stir, considering. "Yeah, because once we know, we can't unknow it. And whatever's in those files, it's going to change how you see your father, how you see everything. Maybe it needs to change. Maybe. But that doesn't make it easier." They ate in near silence, the weight of what was coming pressing down on them both. Alessia found herself watching Luca between bites, the way he moved, the way he thought, the way he seemed to carry the weight of his past like a physical thing. She wondered what he'd done that haunted him so badly, what mistakes he was trying to make up for. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Depends on the question. When you left your family, when you walked away from that life, did you regret it?" Luca set down his fork, leaned back in his chair. "Every day for the first year. I'd wake up and think about how much easier things were when I didn't have a conscience, when I just did what needed doing and collected my money and didn't think about consequences. But eventually I realized that easy isn't the same as right, and living with myself was more important than living comfortably." He met her eyes. "You're going to have to make that same choice, probably soon. When we find out what your father's hiding, you'll have leverage, real power over him. You can use it to negotiate your freedom, or you can use it to destroy him. But you can't do both." "What would you do?" "I'd burn it all down. But I'm not you, and your father isn't my father." Alessia pushed her risotto around her plate, appetite gone. "What if destroying him is the only way to be free?" "Then you destroy him, but you do it knowing what it costs, and you live with that cost for the rest of your life." "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple. That doesn't mean it's easy." They cleaned up in silence, the tension building as midnight approached. Luca set up his equipment on the dining table. 3 laptops, a portable server, cables running everywhere like digital veins. Alessia watched him work, impressed despite herself by the precision of his setup. At 11:30 his phone buzzed. He checked it, nodded. "We're on. Window opens in 30 minutes. "What do you need me to do?" "Sit there. Watch the 3rd screen. If you see anything that looks familiar, file names, project codes, anything your father might have mentioned, tell me immediately." "That's it?" "That's it. I'll handle the technical side. You handle recognition." He pulled up a chair next to her, their shoulders almost touching. "And Alessia? Whatever we find, whatever this reveals about your father or his organization or Sterling Crown, you don't have to decide what to do with it tonight. We gather information, we analyze, we plan. Decisions come later. Okay. I mean it. Don't let emotions drive this. That's how people make mistakes. Speaking from experience? Always. At midnight exactly, Luca's fingers started flying across the keyboard. Code scrolled across the main screen, too fast for Alicia to follow. The second screen showed what looked like a server directory, folders appearing and disappearing as Luca navigated through layers of security. "We're in," he said quietly. 6 hours starting now. The third screen came to life. File structures, documents, spreadsheets. Alicia leaned forward, scanning for anything recognizable. Most of it was gibberish to her, encoded file names and encrypted documents that would take hours to decrypt. But then she saw it. A folder labeled VW-SC-Terms. "There," she said, pointing. "VW. Those are my initials. Varelli Wedding. And SC, Sterling Crown." Luca opened the folder. Inside were contracts, correspondence, transaction records. He started pulling files, his expression darkening as he read. "This is the marriage agreement between your father and Devereaux. But look at the third party." Alicia read the document over his shoulder. Sterling Crown Capital was listed as a guarantor. Whatever deal her father had made with Devereaux, Sterling Crown was backing it, ensuring it happened. "They're not just creditors," she breathed. "They're orchestrating this. They need Devereaux's network as much as your father needs his money. You're the glue that holds it all together." Luca kept scrolling. And here's the timeline. Wedding scheduled for 6 weeks from when this contract was signed. That was 8 weeks ago. So we're 2 weeks out from the original date, which explains why your father's so desperate. He promised Sterling Crown this deal would close. If it doesn't... Luca pulled up another file, this one a series of emails. His face went pale. "What?" "Your father owes them 40 million euros, borrowed it to cover losses in Prague. The deal that went sideways." Luca scrolled through the email chain. Sterling Crown fronted the money on the condition that he'd deliver the Devereaux alliance. If he doesn't, they're not just calling in the debt. They're taking everything. His properties, his businesses, his assets. And based on this last email, they're taking his life. Alessia's stomach dropped. She read the email herself, the language cold and professional, but the threat unmistakable. Failure to deliver on terms would result in immediate foreclosure of all collateral, including personal guarantees. Personal guarantees. That was code for bodies. "He's going to die if this doesn't happen," she whispered. "He made a deal with sharks. This is what happens when you can't pay them back." Alessia felt something crack inside her. All her anger, all her righteous fury about being sold like property, it was still valid, still real. But now it was complicated by the understanding that her father wasn't just cruel. He was terrified. Trapped in a corner by his own mistakes and desperately trying to survive the only way he knew how. "Download everything," she said. "Every file in that folder." "Already doing it." Luca's fingers never stopped moving. "But there's more. Look at this." He pulled up another folder, this one labeled Contingency. Inside were documents Alessia didn't understand at first. Legal papers, transfer agreements, something that looked like a will. "What is this?" "Your father's backup plan. If the marriage doesn't happen, if Sterling Crown comes for him, these documents transfer all his assets to a shell company he set up in your name." Luca opened one of the files. "You're his insurance policy. If he dies, everything goes to you, including his debts." "That's not possible. I never signed anything." "You didn't have to. He forged your signature. Look." Luca zoomed in on a signature line. Alessia Varelli, signed in handwriting that was close to hers but not quite right. He set this up months ago, maybe longer. Alessia felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. "So either I marry Devereaux and he survives, or he dies, and I inherit everything he owes to Sterling Crown, including the 40 million euros, plus interest. They'll come after me. Eventually, after they're done making an example of your father." Luca closed the file. "He built you a cage with no exit. Marry the stranger or inherit the debt. Those were always your only options." Rage and horror and something close to grief crashed over her in waves. She thought running away was rebellion, was freedom, but her father had planned for that, had made sure that even in death, even in failure, he'd drag her down with him. "I need air," she said, standing so fast her chair fell backward. Luca caught her arm. "We still have 5 hours. We need to keep—" "I don't care. I need air." She pulled free and walked outside into the cool night, away from the screens and the files and the inescapable truth of what her father had done. The Mediterranean stretched out before her, dark and infinite, indifferent to human suffering. She wanted to scream, wanted to break something, wanted to wake up and discover this was all a nightmare. But it wasn't. It was her life. Luca followed her out a few minutes later, gave her space but stayed close enough that she knew he was there. They stood in silence, the sound of waves in the distance mixing with the rustle of olive trees in the night breeze. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "For what?" "For making you look. For pushing this. Maybe ignorance would have been better." "No, you were right. I needed to know." Alessia wrapped her arms around herself. "But knowing doesn't fix anything. It just makes it worse. It gives you information. Information is power." "What power? Either I marry a man I don't know to save a father who sold me, or I spend the rest of my life running from people who kill me for money I don't have." She laughed, but it came out broken. "Some choice. There's a third option." "What?" "We expose everything. We send these files to every financial regulator, every law enforcement agency, every journalist who covers organized crime. We burn Sterling Crown. We burn your father. We burn the whole thing to the ground." "That doesn't save me. That just makes more enemies. It makes you untouchable. If everything's public, if everyone knows about the debts and the forgery and the conspiracy, Sterling Crown can't touch you without exposing themselves. And organizations like that survive by staying in the shadows." Luca moved closer. "It's scorched earth. It's ugly. But it's an exit." Alessia considered this, running through the implications. "My father would go to prison. Probably. He could die there. Men like Sterling Crown have reach everywhere. He made his choices. You're making yours. And Devereaux? Loses the deal he wanted, loses access to your father's network, but he's powerful enough to survive it." Luca's voice was calm, rational, giving her the truth without sugarcoating it. "The question is whether you can live with it, with destroying your father to save yourself." Could she? Alessia tried to imagine it, her father in handcuffs, his empire collapsing, his name dragged through newspapers and courtrooms. The man who'd raised her, who'd taught her to memorize numbers, who'd taken her to piano lessons and writing lessons, and made sure she had everything except freedom. The man who'd forged her signature to trap her in his debts. "I don't know," she admitted. "Then we table it. Keep gathering information. See what else is in those files. Maybe there's another way." Luca started back toward the house. "We still have time on the clock. Let's use it." They returned to the screens, to the endless folders and documents. Luca continued methodically pulling files, organizing them, building a complete picture of her father's operation. Alessia watched, numb now, as the scope of it revealed itself. Money laundering through art galleries, weapons shipments disguised as agricultural equipment, bribes to customs officials in 6 countries. Her father wasn't just a businessman making deals. He was a criminal. And she'd been living in his house, eating his food, using his money, completely blind to what he really did. Around 3 in the morning, Luca found something that made him stop. "Alessia, look at this." She leaned over, reading the email on screen. It was from Sterling Crown to her father, dated 2 months ago. The subject line was simple: wedding insurance. The body of the email was chilling. Sterling Crown had conducted background checks on Devereaux, on Alicia, on everyone involved in the marriage arrangement, and they'd discovered something that made Alicia's blood run cold. Devereaux had no intention of honoring the marriage long term. According to Sterling Crown's intelligence, his plan was to marry Alessia, secure the European network access, and then arrange for her father's elimination within 6 months. With Marco Varelli dead and Alicia as his widow, Devereaux would control everything: the network, the assets, the relationships, without having to share power or profits. "He's planning to kill my father," Alessia said, her voice hollow. After the wedding. Once he's got what he needs. Luca scrolled down. And Sterling Crown knows. They're allowing it because it serves their purposes. Your father pays his debt through the marriage, and then Devereaux takes over the operation and becomes their new partner. Everyone wins. Except my father. And you. Look at the next paragraph. Alessia read it, her hands starting to shake. Sterling Crown had also run projections on what would happen to Alessia after her father's death. The assessment was cold, clinical. She would be useful to Devereaux for approximately 18 months, long enough to smooth the transition of power, to legitimize his takeover with European partners who valued family connections. After that, she became a liability, a loose end. The email didn't explicitly say Devereaux would kill her. It didn't have to. The implications were clear enough. They're all planning to kill us, Alessia whispered. My father, me, we're both dead in this scenario. We just don't know it yet. Your father might. That's probably why he's so desperate to find you. He might have figured it out. Then why still push for the marriage? Because it buys him time. Maybe he thinks he can outmaneuver Devereaux after the wedding. Maybe he's got his own contingency plan. Luca closed the file. Or maybe he's just hoping he can sacrifice you and save himself. Alessia sat back, her mind reeling. Everything she'd thought she understood about this situation had just been inverted. Her father wasn't just selling her to save his business. He was potentially walking both of them into an execution they wouldn't see coming. We have to tell him, she said. We have to warn him about Devereaux. Why? He was willing to sell you. Why save him? Because he's still my father. Because maybe if he knows the truth, he'll... She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. He'll what? Apologize? Call off the wedding? Choose her over his survival? He won't, Luca said gently, reading her thoughts. Men like your father don't change when they're cornered. They just get more dangerous. Then what do we do? Luca was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the screens, on the evidence of conspiracy and murder they'd uncovered. We change the game. We give this information to Devereaux. What? Think about it. Right now, Devereaux thinks he's got everyone fooled, thinks he's pulling off the perfect play. But if we tell him that Sterling Crown knows his plan, that they're counting on it, that they're using him just like they're using your father, it changes his calculus. He might come after us. Or he might realize we're offering him something more valuable than your father's network. We're offering him a way to neutralize Sterling Crown's leverage over him. Luca pulled up the email again. This is proof that Sterling Crown is playing both sides. Devereaux won't like that. Men with his kind of ego don't like being used. Alessia tried to follow the logic, her exhausted brain struggling to keep up. So we tell Devereaux that Sterling Crown is setting him up. And then what? Then he has to make a choice. Proceed with the marriage knowing he's being played, or walk away and find another route into European markets. Either way, it breaks the chain. It gives you leverage. And my father? Becomes Sterling Crown's problem. They wanted him to deliver this deal. He can't. They'll come for him, just like they threatened. We'd be killing him. He'd be killing himself. This is his mess, his debt, his deal with people who don't forgive failure. Luca turned to face her fully. Alessia, I know he's your father. I know this is hard, but he put you in this position. He forged your signature. He was willing to feed you to Devereaux to save his own skin. At what point do you stop protecting someone who never protected you? The question hung in the air between them. Alessia wanted to argue, wanted to defend her father, wanted to believe that somewhere under the desperation and the deals and the lies, there was still the man who'd taught her to ride a bicycle and praised her when she got good grades. But that man, if he'd ever really existed, was gone. Buried under years of choices that led to this moment. How would we even contact Devereaux? She asked, hating how small her voice sounded. I have his private number, from before, when we worked together. Luca checked his watch. We've got 2 more hours on this server access. Let me download everything we might need, package it properly. Then we make the call. Tonight? Before your father figures out we've been in his system. Before Sterling Crown decides to accelerate their timeline. Before anyone else gets hurt. He reached out, took her hand. This is the play, Alessia. It's not perfect. It's not clean, but it gets you out. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that there was actually a path through this nightmare that didn't end with her dead or married to a stranger or running forever. But trust required faith, and faith required hope, and she was running dangerously low on both. "Okay," she said finally. "Make the call." Luca nodded and turned back to his screens, downloading files, organizing evidence, building the case they'd present to Devereaux. Alessia watched him work, feeling detached from her own body, like she was observing all of this from a great distance. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. The real one, not the burner. She'd kept it off for days, but she'd turned it on earlier out of habit, just to check if Julia had tried to reach her again. The message wasn't from Julia, it was from her father. Alessia's thumb hovered over the notification, every instinct screaming at her not to open it, not to let him back into her head. But she couldn't help herself. She opened the message. The text was short, simple, devastating. "Alessia, I know you're scared, I know you're angry, but please come home. We can fix this together. I'm still your father. I still love you. Please." She stared at those words until they blurred. "I still love you." Did he? Could he? Or was love just another tool in his arsenal, another lever to pull when nothing else worked? "What is it?" Luca asked, noticing her expression. She showed him the phone. He read the message, his jaw tightening. "He's trying to manipulate you." "I know." "Do you? Because you're looking at that text like you're considering going back." "I'm not. I just—" She struggled to articulate the knot of emotions in her chest. What if this is his way of trying to warn me? What if he figured out Sterling Crown's plan and he's trying to protect me? By telling you to come home? To walk right into the trap? Luca shook his head. If he wanted to protect you, he'd tell you to run. He'd tell you the truth about Devereaux. He wouldn't ask you to trust him after everything he's done. Maybe he can't. Maybe they're monitoring him. Or maybe he's exactly who these files say he is. A desperate man who'll say anything to survive. Luca's voice softened slightly. I know you want him to be better than this, but wanting doesn't make it true. Alessia deleted the message and powered off the phone. Luca was right. Her father had made his choices. Now she had to make hers. The download finished just before 5 in the morning. Luca had everything: contracts, emails, financial records, the complete picture of the conspiracy between her father, Devereaux, and Sterling Crown. He packaged it all into an encrypted file, then pulled up his phone. Last chance to back out, he said. Once I call Devereaux, this is real. No taking it back. Call him. Luca dialed. It rang 4 times before a familiar voice answered, sharp despite the early hour. This better be important, Castellano. It is. We need to meet, today, and you need to bring your lawyers. I don't take orders from Chepar. Sterling Crown is playing you. They know about your plans for Marco Varelli. They're counting on it, and after you eliminate him, they're planning to eliminate you. Luca's voice was calm, factual. I have proof. Documentation. Everything you need to know that this deal isn't what you think it is. Silence on the other end. Then, where? Neutral ground, public. The same gallery where we met before. Noon. How do I know this isn't a trap? Because if I wanted to trap you, you'd already be trapped. This is information exchange. You need what I have. I need your cooperation. Luca glanced at Alicia. And Miss Varelli needs her freedom. Another pause. She's with you. She's with me. Interesting. Noon then. But Castellano, if you're wasting my time, we're going to have a problem. When have I ever wasted your time? Luca hung up before Devereaux could answer. Alessia felt her heart racing. He's going to come. He has to. If what we're saying is true, and he knows it probably is, then he's walking into a trap. Men like Devereaux don't ignore threats like that. And if he doesn't believe us, then we're in the same position we were before, except now we've shown our hand. Luca started packing up his equipment. But I don't think that'll happen. Sterling Crown made a mistake. They underestimated how much Devereaux hates being used. They spent the next few hours preparing, organizing the evidence, planning what to say, running through scenarios. Alessia felt like she was watching someone else's life unfold, like she'd stepped out of her own story and into something darker and more complicated than she'd ever imagined. Around 10, Luca made her eat something. She couldn't taste the food, could barely swallow, but she forced it down anyway. She needed to be sharp for this meeting, needed to be present. "How do I look?" she asked, checking her reflection in the bathroom mirror. She'd changed into different clothes, professional, composed, nothing like the terrified girl who'd run from a cafe a week ago. "Like someone who's about to destroy 3 criminal organizations before lunch," Luca said from the doorway. "You look good." "I look terrified." "That too. But terror and courage aren't opposites. Sometimes they're the same thing in different light." They drove back to Barcelona in silence, the city slowly waking up around them. The gallery looked different in daylight, less glamorous, more utilitarian, just another building where art got bought and sold. Devereaux was already there, standing near the same sculpture as before. He wasn't alone this time. 2 men flanked him, security or lawyers or both. He saw them enter and gestured to a private room off the main gallery. They followed him in. The room was small, windowless, with a single table and several chairs. Devereaux sat, his men standing behind him. Luca and Alessia sat across from him. "Show me," Devereaux said without preamble. Luca pulled out a tablet, brought up the files, slid it across the table. Devereaux read in silence, his expression never changing, but Alessia could see tension building in his shoulders, in the set of his jaw. He read for 10 minutes. Then he looked up. "Where did you get this?" "Marco Varelli's private server. Accessed it last night." Luca leaned back in his chair. "Everything's verified. Everything's real. Sterling Crown knows I'm planning to move against Varelli. They're counting on it. You're not their partner. You're their tool. They're using you to clean up a mess, and then they're planning to clean you up too." Devereaux's hands flattened on the table. "And you're bringing this to me out of the goodness of your heart." "I'm bringing this to you because our interests align. I want Alessia free. You want to not be played by British aristocrats pretending to be businessmen. We help each other." "By doing what, exactly?" "You walk away from the marriage, publicly, loudly. You make it clear that Marco Varelli failed to deliver on his promises, that the deal is off. Sterling Crown loses their leverage over both of you. Your father," he looked at Alicia, "faces whatever consequences come from his debts. But you're not part of it anymore." Alessia found her voice. "I never wanted to be part of it in the first place." Devereaux studied her for a long moment. "Your father loves you, in his own way. This whole mess, the marriage, the deals, the desperation, it's all to protect his empire so he has something to leave you." "I don't want his empire. I never did." "Then you're smarter than most." Devereaux looked back at Luca. "If I walk away, Sterling Crown comes for Varelli. They'll make an example. It won't be quick. That's not your problem, unless you're suddenly concerned about the welfare of men who lie to you. I'm concerned about precedent, about what happens when powerful organizations decide to eliminate people who fail them." Devereaux tapped the tablet. "If I let this happen to Varelli, what's to stop them from doing it to me the next time I don't deliver what they want? You're not Marco Varelli. You didn't borrow money you couldn't pay back. You didn't make promises you couldn't keep. You're still valuable to them. For now." The implication hung in the air. Luca had made his point. Sterling Crown was dangerous to everyone, not just Alessia's father. Devereaux would be foolish to trust them, let alone work with them. "What do you want in return?" Devereaux asked. "For this information. For your silence about my original plans. Protection. For Alicia. A public statement that she was never truly part of this arrangement, that she's free of any obligations or debts connected to her father's organization." Luca's voice was firm. "You're powerful enough to make that stick, to make sure Sterling Crown doesn't come after her for her father's failures. That's asking a lot. You're getting a lot. You're getting the truth about who's trying to play you, and you're getting out of a deal that would have ended with Sterling Crown owning you." Devereaux considered this, his fingers drumming on the table. Finally, he nodded. "Done. I'll release a statement today. The marriage is off. Miss Varelli had no knowledge of the arrangement and bears no responsibility for her father's business dealings. She's free." Alessia felt something break loose in her chest. Relief, terror, grief, all mixed together. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Sterling Crown won't accept this quietly. They'll push back. They might come after you anyway, regardless of what I say." "Then we'll deal with that when it comes," Luca said. "But at least she won't have you to worry about." Generous of you to think I was ever a threat. You were planning to kill her father and use her as window dressing for 18 months. That's a threat. Devereaux smiled that cold smile. Fair point. He stood. The statement will go out within the hour. After that, you're on your own. I'd suggest leaving Europe. Sterling Crown has a long reach, but it's shorter in Asia or South America. We'll manage. I'm sure you will. You always were good at surviving, Castellano. Devereaux headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Miss Varelli, your father does love you. He's just loved his empire more. That's his tragedy, not yours. He left, his men following. The door clicked shut behind them. Alicia sat in the sudden silence, trying to process what had just happened. She was free. The marriage was off. Devereaux had promised protection. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like the eye of a hurricane, a moment of calm before everything exploded. We should go, Luca said quietly. Devereaux will keep his word about the statement, but we don't want to be here when your father finds out. They left the gallery quickly, emerging into bright Barcelona sunlight. Alicia felt exposed, vulnerable, like everyone on the street could see what she'd just done. She'd essentially signed her father's death warrant. Sterling Crown would come for him now. There'd be no marriage to save him, no alliance to protect him, just debts and consequences, and the violence men like that dispensed when they didn't get what they wanted. Are you okay? Luca asked as they walked. I don't know. Ask me later. Later might be complicated. We should leave the city, today. Your father's going to realize what happened, and he's not going to take it well. Where would we even go? I've got contacts in Lisbon. We could disappear there for a while. Let this settle. See what happens next. Alessia stopped walking. What happens next is my father dies, and it's my fault. It's his fault, his choices, his deals. I could have stayed silent, could have just run. Instead, I made it worse. You made it honest. There's a difference. Luca took her shoulders, made her look at him. Your father was dead the moment he borrowed money from Sterling Crown. You didn't kill him. You just refused to die with him. That's not how it feels. I know. But feelings aren't facts. The fact is you survived. You're standing here free, with your whole life ahead of you. That's not nothing. Alicia wanted to believe him, wanted to feel the victory he was describing. But all she felt was hollow, like she'd won a war by burning down her own home. Her phone, still off, felt like a weight in her pocket. She wondered if her father had sent more messages, more pleas, more manipulations disguised as love. She wondered if she'd ever be able to forgive herself for not answering them. Lisbon, she said finally. Let's go to Lisbon. You're sure? No, but I'm not sure about anything anymore. At least Lisbon is somewhere else. They walked back to the car, leaving Barcelona behind, leaving the gallery and Devereaux and the whole nightmare. Alessia looked back once, at the city that had been her refuge and her prison, the place where she'd tried to be free and ended up more trapped than ever. But she was getting out now. Devereaux's statement would hit the news soon. Her father would know. Sterling Crown would know. Everyone would know that the deal was dead. And whatever came next, whatever violence or vengeance or consequence followed, she'd face it as herself. Not as her father's daughter. Not as Devereaux's promised bride. Just as Alessia. It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd had a week ago. She got in the car, Luca started the engine, and they drove toward Lisbon, toward whatever future waited for them there, leaving behind the ruins of everything she'd ever known. The drive to Lisbon took 8 hours, winding through Spanish countryside that blurred into Portuguese hills, the landscape changing as they crossed borders that meant nothing to the people hunting them. Alessia spent most of the journey staring out the window, her phone still off, her mind replaying the meeting with Devereaux over and over, like she could change the outcome by thinking about it differently. Luca drove in silence, occasionally checking his mirrors, taking exits and back roads that added time but minimized risk. Around hour 5, he pulled into a rest stop and bought them sandwiches they ate without tasting, coffee that went cold before they finished it. You should try to sleep, he said as they got back on the road. I can't. Try anyway. Once we get to Lisbon, things are going to move fast. How do you know? Because they always do. Right now, everyone's reacting. Devereaux's putting out his statement. Your father's finding out the deal's dead. Sterling Crown is calculating their next move. We've got maybe 12 hours before someone decides what to do about it. He glanced at her. Sleep now. You'll need the energy later. She tried. Closed her eyes, leaned against the window, tried to let the rhythm of the road lull her into something like rest. But every time she started to drift, she saw her father's face, heard his voice. I still love you. Did he? Had he ever? Or had she just been another asset in a portfolio he was trying to protect? She must have dozed eventually because she woke to Luca shaking her shoulder gently, the car parked on a narrow street lined with pastel buildings. Lisbon. The city was bathed in late afternoon light, everything gold and pink and impossibly beautiful. We're here, Luca said. Apartments on the 3rd floor. My contact left keys with the neighbor. The apartment was small and sparse. 1 bedroom, a living area with a fold-out couch, windows that overlooked a square where old men played chess and children kicked a soccer ball. It felt temporary, like a place designed for people passing through rather than staying. Alicia dropped her backpack and immediately checked her phone. Still off. Still a wall between her and whatever chaos was unfolding. You're going to have to turn it on eventually, Luca said, reading her hesitation. I know. Want me to be here when you do? She nodded. Her hands were shaking as she powered on the phone. It took forever to boot up, each second stretching into eternity. Then the notifications started flooding in. 43 missed calls, 67 text messages, voicemails filling her inbox. Most were from her father, some from Julia, several from numbers she didn't recognize. Start with the news, Luca suggested. See what Devereaux actually said before you read anything personal. She pulled up a news app, searched for Devereaux's name. The statement had been released 3 hours ago, picked up by financial press and gossip sites alike. American businessman Luca Devereaux announced today the dissolution of a planned business alliance with Swiss financier Marco Virelli. Sources close to Devereaux indicate the decision was made after discovering discrepancies in Virelli's financial disclosures. Rumors of an arranged marriage between Devereaux and Virelli's daughter, Alessia, have been firmly denied by Devereaux's representatives, who stated Miss Virelli had no knowledge of or involvement in any business discussions between the two men. Alessia read it twice. It was exactly what Devereaux had promised, a public severing of ties that positioned her as innocent, uninvolved, free. But the article continued. The announcement has sent shockwaves through European financial circles, where Virelli's organization has long been a subject of speculation regarding its ties to organized crime. Analysts suggest Devereaux's withdrawal may signal deeper problems within Virelli's operations. Representatives for Virelli could not be reached for comment. He's being destroyed, Alessia whispered. They're tearing him apart in the press. That's what happens when you lose powerful allies. The vultures start circling. Luca leaned against the wall. Your father built his reputation on being untouchable. Devereaux just made him very touchable. Alessia scrolled through more articles. They were all saying the same thing in different words. Marco Virelli was finished. His empire was crumbling. Sources suggested federal investigations were imminent. The name Virelli, once synonymous with power and influence, was becoming a cautionary tale. She opened her messages, started with Julia. Oh my God, are you okay? The news about your father is everywhere. He came to my apartment again this morning. He looked terrible. Said he needs to find you urgently. Please tell me you're safe. Alessia typed back quickly. I'm safe. Don't tell him anything. I'll explain everything soon. Then she scrolled to her father's messages. The first few were from days ago, pleading, desperate, the ones she'd already seen. But the recent ones, sent in the last few hours, were different. You did this. You destroyed everything. I know you're with Castellano. I know what you gave Devereaux. How could you betray your own father? They're coming for me, Alessia. Sterling Crown. They're going to kill me. Is this what you wanted? And then, sent just 20 minutes ago. I'm sorry for everything. I was trying to protect you. I failed. I love you. I'm sorry. The last message made her throat close up. She showed the phone to Luca, unable to speak. He read them, his expression grim. He knows. Probably figured it out the moment Devereaux's statement hit, and now he's trying to make you feel guilty for his choices. What if he's really sorry? What if this is real? Then he should have been sorry before before he forged your signature, before he sold you to save himself. Luca took the phone gently, set it down. Alicia, listen to me. Your father is a master manipulator. This is what he does. He finds your weak spot and he pushes until you break. Don't let him. He said they're coming for him. They probably are. Sterling Crown doesn't make idle threats. So we just let him die? We already made that choice. When we gave Devereaux the information, when we walked away from the gallery. Luca's voice was firm but not unkind. You can't save him. You can only choose whether to drown with him. Alessia knew he was right. She'd known it from the moment they'd accessed her father's server, from the moment she'd seen the contracts and the debts and the trap he'd built for both of them. But knowing something and feeling it were different things. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She stared at it. Don't answer, Luca said. She answered anyway. Hello? Miss Varelli. The voice was British, cultured, cold as winter. My name is Charles Rothman. I represent Sterling Crown Capital. I believe we need to have a conversation. Alessia's blood went cold. She put the phone on speaker so Luca could hear. I don't have anything to say to you. On the contrary, you have a great deal to say. And we have a great deal to discuss regarding your father's debts, regarding certain documents that have come into your possession, regarding your future. I have nothing to do with my father's debts. Devereaux's statement made that clear. Mr. Devereaux's statement was very thoughtful, but I'm afraid it doesn't change certain legal realities. Your father signed documents putting you as guarantor on several loans, documents with your signature. Whether that signature was obtained through proper channels is immaterial to us. The contracts exist. Those signatures were forged. Prove it. In court. While we freeze all assets associated with your name. While we pursue collection through every legal and extra-legal means at our disposal. Rothman's voice never changed, staying pleasant and terrifying. Or we can discuss a more civilized resolution. What kind of resolution? A meeting, tomorrow, here in Lisbon. We've been tracking you, Miss Virelli. We know where you are. Luca grabbed the phone. This is Luca Castellano. If you threaten her again, I will personally make sure every law enforcement agency in Europe knows about Sterling Crown's operations. I have documentation, everything. Ah, Mr. Castellano, I was wondering when you'd speak up. Your family sends their regards, by the way. They're quite interested to know you're still alive. Luca's face went pale. You contacted my family. We contacted everyone who might have leverage over Miss Varelli's cooperation, including certain individuals who have outstanding grievances with the Castellano family. They'd be very interested to know your location. You son of a... Tomorrow, 10 a.m. The address will be sent to Miss Varelli's phone. Come alone, both of you, or we start making calls to very dangerous people. Rothman hung up. The silence in the apartment was deafening. Alicia looked at Luca, saw something she hadn't seen before. Fear. Real, genuine fear. Your family, she said. What does he mean? It means I didn't just walk away from that life. I ran from it after I testified against them, put half my cousins in federal prison. Luca sat down heavily. If Sterling Crown tells them where I am, they'll send people, and those people won't care about jurisdiction or consequences. How did I not know this? Because I didn't tell you. Because it wasn't relevant until now. He ran his hands through his hair. I thought I'd covered my tracks well enough. Changed my name, moved constantly, stayed off the grid. But Sterling Crown has resources I didn't account for. So what do? We don't go to that meeting. We run, right now, before they can box us in. Luca stood, started grabbing their things. I have contacts in Morocco. We can be on a boat tonight, gone before they realize we're not coming. And then what? We run forever? They just said they know where we are. They're tracking us. How far do we get before they find us again? Far enough to buy time, to plan, to figure out a real solution. Alicia thought about this, about a life spent looking over her shoulder, about Luca's family hunting him, about Sterling Crown's endless resources and infinite patience. Or we go to the meeting. That's suicide. Is it? They want something from us. Otherwise they would have just grabbed us already. They called to negotiate. They called to control the situation, to make us come to them on their terms. Then we changed the terms. Alessia picked up her phone, pulled up the files Luca had downloaded from her father's server. We have ammunition too. Evidence of their operations, their involvement in the marriage scheme, their plans to eliminate Devereaux. If we go public with this, we'd be dead before the first article published. Not if we set up a dead man's switch. Not if we make it clear that the information goes public the moment anything happens to us. She was thinking fast now, adrenaline burning through the fear. We go to the meeting. We tell them we have insurance. We negotiate our way out. Alessia, these people don't negotiate. They eliminate problems. Then we make sure we're more valuable alive than dead. She met his eyes. You said I needed leverage. This is leverage, real leverage, the kind that makes us untouchable. Luca stared at her, and she could see him calculating, running scenarios, weighing odds. It's risky. Everything's risky. Running is risky. Hiding is risky. At least this way we're making a choice instead of just reacting. He was quiet for a long moment, then he nodded slowly. Okay, we go to the meeting, but we do it smart. We set up the dead man's switch first. Multiple copies of the files sent to journalists, law enforcement, competitors. All set to release if we don't check in every 12 hours. Can you do that? I can do that, but Alessia, he caught her hand. If this goes wrong, if they call our bluff, we might not walk out of that meeting. I know. And you're still willing to try? She thought about her father, about his last message. I'm sorry. I love you. I failed. She thought about a life spent running, constantly afraid, never free. She thought about who she'd been 3 weeks ago and who she was becoming. I'm willing, she said. They spent the rest of the night preparing. Luca set up the dead man's switch, distributing files across encrypted servers, scheduling releases, building layers of protection that would survive even if they didn't. Alessia memorized talking points, practiced staying calm, tried to become someone who could walk into a room with people who wanted to kill her and negotiate for her life. Around 3 a.m, exhausted and wired, they took a break. Luca made tea. They sat by the window, watching Lisbon sleep. Tell me about your family, Alessia said. What happened that made you testify? Luca was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, my brother, younger than me by 3 years. He wanted out too, wanted to go to university, study medicine, have a normal life. My family wouldn't allow it. Said he had obligations, legacy, all the same bullshit your father probably told you. What happened to him? He tried to leave anyway. They made an example of him, put him in the hospital for 6 months. Luca's voice was flat, emotionless, but Alessia could hear the pain underneath. I visited him every day, watched him learn to walk again, to talk again. And I decided that if I didn't stop them, they'd do it to someone else. So I gathered evidence, went to the FBI, testified. Where is he now, your brother? Witness protection, somewhere in the Midwest, living under a new name. We can't contact each other, too risky. But he's alive. He's free. That's enough. Is it? It has to be. He looked at her. That's why I help people like you, because I couldn't save my brother from our family, but maybe I can save someone else from theirs. Alessia reached out, took his hand. You did save him. You gave him a chance at a real life. That's more than most people get. Doesn't feel like enough. It never does. But that doesn't make it less true. They sat in silence, hands linked, watching dawn break over Lisbon. In a few hours, they'd walk into a meeting that could end with their freedom or their deaths. But right now, in this moment, they had each other. It wasn't much, but it was something. The address Sterling Crown sent was for a private office building in Lisbon's financial district. Expensive real estate, the kind of place where serious money made serious decisions. Luca and Alessia arrived at 9:50, 10 minutes early, both dressed professionally like this was a business meeting instead of a potential execution. Security met them at the entrance. 2 men, stone-faced, who searched them for weapons and recording devices. They found nothing. Luca had left everything behind except his phone, and even that was a clean burner with nothing incriminating on it. They were escorted to the top floor, to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Tagus River. Charles Rothman sat behind a massive desk, exactly what Alessia had expected, 60 years old, impeccably dressed, the kind of man who looked like he'd never done manual labor in his life. Miss Varelli, Mr. Castellano, please sit. He gestured to chairs across from him. They sat. Alessia forced herself to maintain eye contact, to not show fear. Thank you for coming, Rothman continued. I admit I had concerns you might not. We're here to negotiate, Alicia said, not to surrender. Negotiate. Interesting choice of words. Rothman opened a folder on his desk. Let me be clear about the situation. Your father owes Sterling Crown 40 million euros. He promised to deliver an alliance with Luca Devereaux. He failed. Under the terms of our agreement, we are now entitled to seize all collateral, including assets held in your name. Assets transferred through forged signatures. That won't hold up legally. Perhaps? Perhaps not. Legal battles take years, during which time your assets would be frozen, your reputation destroyed, your life made exceptionally difficult. Rothman smiled. Or we could resolve this more efficiently. What do you want? Information, access, cooperation. He leaned forward. Your father's operation, while flawed, has value. Contacts throughout Europe, distribution networks, relationships we could leverage. You grew up in that world, Miss Varelli. You know how it works. Help us transition control smoothly, and we'll forgive the debt. You walk away clean. You want me to betray my father? Your father betrayed himself. We're simply offering you a way to survive his mistakes. Alessia felt anger flash through her. No. No? I won't help you destroy what's left of his organization. I won't be part of this. Rothman's expression didn't change. Then you leave us no choice but to pursue collection through other means, including making certain phone calls about Mr. Castellano's location. Make them, Luca said calmly. And within 24 hours, every intelligence agency in Europe will receive detailed documentation of Sterling Crown's operations, money laundering, arms trafficking, political bribery, all of it. You're bluffing. Try me. Luca pulled out his phone, showed Rothman a screen. Dead man's switch. If we don't check in every 12 hours, the files release automatically. If anything happens to us, they release. If you threaten us, they release. Your move. Rothman studied the phone, his composure finally cracking slightly. You'd destroy yourselves in the process. That documentation implicates your father, Miss Varelli. It would send him to prison. He's going to prison, or he's going to die. Those are his only options now. Alessia's voice was steadier than she felt. But I don't have to go down with him. Neither does Luca. So here's our offer. You forgive my father's debt. You leave both of us alone, and we don't release the files. Why would we agree to that? Your father's debt is substantial. Because if you don't, you lose everything. Your organization gets exposed. Your operations shut down. Your partners go to prison. Luca leaned forward. 40 million euros is a lot of money, but it's not worth your entire empire. Rothman was quiet, his fingers steepled, calculating. Alessia could see him running numbers, weighing risks, deciding whether to call their bluff. There's a third option, he said finally. We eliminate you both, quickly, quietly, before your dead man's switch can trigger. You could try, Luca said, but we're not the only ones with access to those files. My brother has them. Alessia's friend Julia has them. People you don't know about, who you can't find, who will release everything if we disappear. It was a lie. Julia had no idea any of this existed. Luca's brother was in witness protection and completely unreachable, but Rothman didn't know that. You're quite prepared, Rothman observed. We learned from watching you, Alicia said. Always have insurance. Always have leverage. Isn't that what organizations like Sterling Crown teach? A thin smile crossed Rothman's face. You have your father's strategic mind. It's almost a pity you weren't willing to work with us. Is that a yes? You'll forgive the debt? I'll recommend it to my superiors. Whether they agree is another matter. Rothman stood. You understand this doesn't end your problems. Your father still faces consequences from other creditors. Other organizations he's failed. We're not his only problem. But you're the biggest one. The rest we can handle. Confident. I hope it's justified. Rothman walked to the window, looked out at Lisbon. You should leave Portugal, today. Sterling Crown may agree to leave you alone, but I can't promise the same for our competitors. Word travels fast in our world. Everyone will know your father failed. They'll come looking for anything valuable he left behind, including you. Where should we go? Somewhere unexpected. Somewhere without extradition treaties or old family connections. He turned back to them. South America, perhaps, or Southeast Asia. Make yourself difficult to find. We're good at that. I suspect you are. Rothman returned to his desk, made a note on a paper. You'll have my decision by tonight. Until then, I'd suggest staying mobile. They stood to leave. At the door, Alicia paused. My father. What's going to happen to him? That's no longer Sterling Crown's concern. We're releasing our claim on his assets and his debts. What other organizations choose to do is their business. Rothman's expression was unreadable. If you're hoping I'll tell you he'll be fine, I can't. Men like Marco Varelli rarely have happy endings. I know. They left the building, emerged into bright Lisbon sunshine, both of them moving quickly without running, putting distance between themselves and Sterling Crown. 3 blocks away, Luca finally spoke. We did it. We actually did it. Maybe, if Rothman's superiors agree. Alessia felt shaky, adrenaline crash hitting hard. And if they don't, then we run. For real this time. No looking back. They returned to the apartment, packed everything in 10 minutes, ready to move at the first sign of trouble. Luca kept checking his phone, watching for Rothman's response. Alessia did the same, her mind spinning with everything that had happened. Her phone rang around 7 p.m. Unknown number again. Miss Varelli, Charles Rothman, Sterling Crown has accepted your terms. Your father's debt is forgiven. We will have no further contact with you or Mr. Castellano. I suggest you honor your end by maintaining your silence. We will. One more thing. Your father contacted us this afternoon. He wanted to know if you were safe. I told him you were. He asked me to tell you something. Alicia's throat tightened. What? He said he's sorry, that he should have been a better father, that he hopes you find the life he couldn't give you. Rothman paused. He's checking himself into federal custody tomorrow morning, turning himself in rather than waiting for someone to find him. Thought you should know. The line went dead. Alessia stood frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear, Rothman's words echoing. Her father was surrendering, choosing prison over running, maybe choosing some kind of redemption over continuing to fight. What did he say? Luca asked. She told him. Luca's expression softened. Your father made the right choice, for once. It doesn't change anything. No, but it means something. That he chose to face consequences instead of running, that he wanted you to know he was sorry. Luca took her shoulders gently. You don't have to forgive him, but you can acknowledge that he tried, at the end, to do one decent thing. One decent thing doesn't erase everything else. No, but sometimes it's enough to let you move forward. Alessia nodded, blinking back tears she didn't want to shed. Her father was going to prison. His empire was collapsing, and she was free, truly free, for the first time in her life. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like grief. We should go, she said, wiping her eyes. Rothman said to leave Portugal. Where do you want to go? She thought about it, about all the places she dreamed of seeing when she was trapped in her father's world, about the life waiting somewhere out there, full of possibilities she'd never allowed herself to imagine. Buenos Aires, she said. I've always wanted to see Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires it is. They booked flights for the next morning, spent their last night in Lisbon walking through the old neighborhoods, eating dinner at a small restaurant where no one knew them or cared who they were. It felt almost normal, almost like two people just traveling together instead of fleeing from criminals and family and the wreckage of everything they'd left behind. Around midnight, sitting on a bench overlooking the river, Luca asked the question Alessia had been avoiding. What happens now? With us? She'd been wondering the same thing. They'd been thrown together by crisis, bound by necessity. But necessity was ending. In Buenos Aires, they could go their separate ways, start their individual new lives. I don't know, she admitted. Do you want to stay together? That's not what I asked. What did you ask? What you want. Not what's practical, not what makes sense. What do you want, Alessia? She looked at him, This man who'd saved her, protected her, stood with her through everything. She'd trusted him when she couldn't trust anyone. He'd seen her at her worst and hadn't walked away. And somewhere along the way, between the running and the planning and the quiet moments in safe houses, she'd started to feel something she hadn't expected. "I want you to stay," she said quietly. "If you want to. No obligation, no debt. Just because we work well together." "We do work well together." "Is that a yes?" "It's a maybe. Let's see how we feel in Buenos Aires. If we're still talking after a week of not being chased, we'll discuss it then." "Fair enough." They sat in comfortable silence, watching boats move along the river, the city lights reflecting on dark water. Tomorrow, they'd fly to South America. They'd disappear into new identities, new lives. Eventually, maybe they'd stop looking over their shoulders. But tonight, they were just two people who'd survived impossible odds, sitting by a river in a beautiful city, grateful to still be breathing. Alessia's phone buzzed one last time. A message from Julia. "I saw the news about your father. Are you okay? Do you need anything?" She typed back, "I'm okay. Better than okay. I'll call you when I'm settled. Thank you for being a real friend." Then she powered off the phone completely. That life, the one with her father in Geneva and the weight of expectations, was over. What came next was hers to decide. "Ready?" Luca asked, standing and offering his hand. Alessia took it, let him pull her to her feet. "Ready." They walked back through Lisbon's narrow streets, two shadows among many, disappearing into the night like they'd never been there at all. And for the first time since she'd run from that cafe in Barcelona, Alessia felt something that had been missing for so long she'd almost forgotten what it felt like. Hope. Buenos Aires hit them like a wall of heat and noise and color when they stepped off the plane the next afternoon. The city was alive in a way Europe had never been. Music spilling from cafes, street vendors calling out in rapid Spanish, the smell of grilled meat and fresh bread mixing with exhaust and jacaranda blossoms. Alessia felt anonymous here in the best possible way. Just another face in a crowd of millions. They found an apartment in Palermo through one of Luca's seemingly endless network of contacts, a second-floor walk-up with a balcony overlooking a tree-lined street. 2 bedrooms this time, a clear boundary neither of them had discussed but both understood was necessary. They were starting something new, whatever that meant. The first week passed in a haze of adjustment, learning the neighborhood, finding markets and cafes and places to blend in. Luca set up new identities for both of them, proper ones this time, with documentation that would hold up to scrutiny. Alessia became Sofia Mendez. Luca became Marco Torres. Different people with clean histories and no connections to Switzerland or criminal empires or arranged marriages. They fell into a routine without planning it. Morning coffee on the balcony. Luca reading news on his laptop while Alessia learned Spanish from an app. Lunch at different places each day, exploring the city. Evenings cooking together or walking through parks where couples danced tango under string lights. It felt almost domestic, almost normal, and that scared Alessia more than running ever had. On day 8, sitting on the balcony watching sunset paint the sky orange and pink, she finally asked what had been bothering her. "What are we doing here, Luca?" He looked up from his coffee. "Living, breathing, surviving. You know what I mean." "Do I?" "We're playing house, pretending everything's fine. But we haven't talked about what happens next, about whether this is temporary or something else." Luca set down his cup. "What do you want it to be?" "I asked you first." "Fair enough." He was quiet for a moment, choosing words carefully. "I like this. Waking up and knowing you're safe. Making breakfast. Having someone to talk to who understands where I've been. It's more than I expected to have after I left my old life. But I don't want you to stay because you feel obligated, because I helped you, because you think you owe me something." He met her eyes. "If you're here, I need you to be here because you want to be, not because you don't know where else to go." Alessia felt something loosen in her chest. What if it's both? What if I want to be here and I also don't know where else I'd go? Then we're in the same boat. Is that enough to build something on? I don't know. I've never tried before. Luca reached across the small table, took her hand. But maybe we figure it out as we go. No pressure. No expectations. Just two people who survived hell together, trying to see if they can survive peace too. That's terrifyingly honest. You want me to lie instead? No, I want... She stopped, trying to articulate what she was feeling. I want to stop being afraid of my father, of Sterling Crown, of whatever comes next. I want to wake up and not check for threats. I want to live a life that's mine. You can have that. You do have that. Your father's in custody. Sterling Crown left us alone. Devereaux moved on. We won. Then why doesn't it feel like winning? Luca squeezed her hand. Because winning hurt people, including your father, and because you're still processing everything that happened. Give it time. Time. She had that now. For the first time in her life, she had time that belonged to her. Her phone, the new one, under her new identity, buzzed with a message. From Julia, who'd somehow tracked down her new number despite Alessia's precautions. I'm so glad you're okay. Your father's lawyer contacted me. Said he wants to write you a letter. Should I give him this number? Alessia stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. Her father was in a Swiss prison awaiting trial, facing decades behind bars, and he wanted to write to her. What should I do? She asked, showing Luca the message. What do you want to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to hear what he has to say. Part of me thinks it'll just be more manipulation. Probably both. Your father's complicated. That doesn't change just because he's in prison. Luca released her hand, leaned back. But if you're asking my opinion, read the letter. You don't have to respond. You don't have to forgive him. But at least you'll know what he wanted to say. Alessia typed back to Julia. Tell his lawyer he can send a letter, but just one. And I'm not promising to answer. Julia's response came immediately. Understood. Take care of yourself. I miss you. Miss you too. Come visit sometime. Buenos Aires is beautiful. She set down the phone and found Luca watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? You're brave. Braver than you think. I don't feel brave. I feel like I'm barely holding it together. That's what brave looks like, holding it together when everything wants to fall apart. They sat in comfortable silence as night fell over Buenos Aires, the city coming alive with a different energy. Restaurants filling up, music getting louder, couples strolling hand in hand. Alessia watched them and wondered if she and Luca would ever be that. People who walked together without looking over their shoulders, who trusted the world enough to be that open. The letter arrived 3 weeks later, forwarded through Julia to a private mailbox Luca had set up. Alessia held the envelope for 2 days before opening it, the weight of her father's words inside feeling heavier than paper should. Finally, on a quiet morning when Luca was out buying groceries, she sat at the kitchen table and opened it. The handwriting was her father's, precise, controlled, the letters formed with the same attention to detail he'd applied to everything in his life. Alessia, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect forgiveness or understanding or anything except what I deserve, which is your anger and your silence. But I'm writing anyway, because there are things I need to say even if you never respond. I failed you, not just at the end, with the marriage arrangement and the forged signatures and the desperation that made me treat you like property. I failed you from the beginning by raising you in a world where you were never supposed to have choices, where your value was determined by what you could do for the family business rather than who you were as a person. I told myself I was protecting you by keeping you close, by controlling your education, your career, your future, but I was really protecting myself. Protecting the empire I'd built, protecting the illusion that I was a good father when all I was doing was preparing you to be useful. You were never supposed to know what I really did, the deals I made, the people I hurt. I wanted you to think I was legitimate, powerful, but legitimate. And when you found out the truth, when you ran, I should have let you go. I should have been glad you were brave enough to choose yourself over me. Instead, I hunted you. I made deals that put your life at risk. I forged your name to trap you in my debts. And I told myself it was for your own good, for your protection. When really, it was just cowardice. I couldn't face losing my empire and losing you at the same time. Sterling Crown told me you negotiated your freedom, that you outmaneuvered men who've been playing this game longer than you've been alive. I was proud of that. Terrified for you, but proud. You became everything I should have encouraged you to be from the start. strong, independent, willing to fight for yourself. I'm in prison now. I'll probably die here. The trial is a formality. I've made too many enemies, destroyed too many bridges. There's no way back from this. But knowing you're out there, free, living the life I never gave you permission to live, that's enough. That has to be enough. I don't expect you to write back. I don't expect you to forgive me or remember me kindly or tell people I was anything other than what I was. But I need you to know that I loved you. In my broken, selfish, inadequate way, I loved you. And I'm sorry I never learned how to show it properly. Be happy, Alessia. Be everything I wasn't brave enough to be. Your father. Alessia read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face by the end of the second read. It didn't fix anything, didn't erase the pain or the betrayal or the years of control disguised as love. But it was something, an acknowledgement, an apology that felt real, even if it came too late. She was still sitting there, the letter in her hands, when Luca came back with groceries. He took one look at her face and set the bags down. The letter? She nodded, unable to speak. He sat across from her, waited until she could breathe again. Want to talk about it? He's sorry. He knows he failed me. He's trying to make peace with it. She wiped her eyes. And I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything. You can just let it exist. An apology you received but don't have to accept. Is that allowed? There are no rules for this, Alessia. You get to decide what you do with your father's regrets. Keep them. Throw them away. File them somewhere and think about them later. Whatever helps you move forward. She folded the letter carefully, put it back in the envelope. I think I want to keep it. Not because I forgive him, but because someday I might want to remember that he tried at the end, to be honest. That's fair. Is it? After everything he did? After everything he did, you're still here. Still standing. Still choosing kindness over bitterness. Luca reached across the table, brushed a tear from her cheek. That's not weakness. That's strength. Alessia leaned into his touch, feeling the warmth of his hand against her skin. They'd been dancing around this for weeks. The growing closeness, the moments of connection that felt like more than friendship, but less than they could name. She was tired of dancing. Luca, she said quietly, what are we to each other? I don't know. What do you want us to be? Something real. Something that's ours. Not born from crisis or necessity or debt. She met his eyes. I want to choose you. Not because you saved me. Not because I don't know where else to go. But because I want to see what we could be if we tried. Luca was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. That rare, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. I'd like that too. Yeah? Yeah. He stood, pulled her up with him, held her close. But we do it right, no rushing, no pretending we're not both damaged from what we've been through. We figure out who we are separately before we figure out who we are together. That sounds impossibly mature. I have my moments. He kissed her forehead, gentle and careful. We've got time, Alessia. For the first time in both our lives, we've got nothing but time. They spent the rest of the day doing normal things, putting away groceries, making lunch, arguing about what movie to watch. It was boring and beautiful, and exactly what Alicia needed. Normal, safe, hers. Over the following weeks, they started building real lives in Buenos Aires. Luca found work consulting for a tech company, using his skills in cybersecurity for legal purposes for the first time in years. Alessia enrolled in architecture courses at the university, finally pursuing the education her father had forbidden. They made friends, carefully, slowly, but genuinely. People who knew them as Sofia and Marco, who had no idea about Geneva or Sterling Crown or the violence they'd escaped. Some nights, Alessia still woke up gasping, convinced someone had found them. Luca would hear her from his room and come sit with her until the panic passed. Some nights, it was Luca who couldn't sleep, haunted by his family or the people he'd hurt before he'd changed. Alicia would make tea and they'd sit on the balcony until dawn, not talking, just existing together. They were both broken. They were both healing. And slowly, carefully, they were learning that those things could coexist. 3 months after arriving in Buenos Aires, Alessia got a call from an international number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, old habits and old fears rising up, but something made her pick up. Miss Varelli, or should I say Miss Mendez? Devereaux's voice, unmistakable even across continents. Her blood went cold. How did you get this number? I have resources, you know that. He sounded amused rather than threatening. Relax, I'm not calling to cause problems. I'm calling with information I thought you should have. What information? Your father. His trial concluded yesterday. He pleaded guilty to all charges. Money laundering, racketeering, fraud. He's looking at 25 years. Alessia's chest tightened. Why are you telling me this? Because he made a statement. Public record. Thought you might want to know what he said. Papers rustled on Devereaux's end. He said, and I quote, "My daughter had no knowledge of or involvement in any of my illegal activities. She is innocent of all wrongdoing and should be allowed to live her life free of any association with my crimes. I asked the court to make that clear in their judgment." Tears pricked Alessia's eyes. He protected me. Even at the end. He did. The judge agreed. Issued a statement clearing you of any connection to his organization. You're officially clean, Miss Mendez. No outstanding warrants. No agencies looking for you. You can come out of hiding if you want. I don't want to come out of hiding. I like my life here. Smart. But you should know the option exists. Devereaux paused. For what it's worth, your father did love you, in his own broken way. Some men just don't know how to love without trying to control. I know. Thank you for telling me. Consider it a wedding gift, or a not wedding gift, I suppose. That cold smile was audible in his voice. Take care of yourself, Miss Mendez, and take care of Castellano. He's earned some peace. So have you. Perhaps, though I doubt I'll find it. He hung up. Alessia sat holding the phone, processing what Devereaux had said. Her father had protected her with his guilty plea, had made sure the courts knew she was innocent. It was the last gift he could give her. Freedom, official and legal and complete. Luca found her on this balcony an hour later, staring at the street below. You okay? She told him about Devereaux's call, about her father's statement, about being officially cleared. How do you feel? Luca asked. Free, sad, grateful, guilty for feeling grateful. She looked at him. Is it wrong that I'm relieved he's in prison? That I don't have to worry about him finding me or dragging me back? It's human. You can love someone and still be relieved when they can't hurt you anymore. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. I want to visit him someday. Not now, but eventually. I want to look him in the eye and tell him I forgive him. Not because he deserves it, because I deserve to let go. Then we'll go. When you're ready. I'll come with you if you want. You'd do that? I'd do a lot of things for you, Alessia. Haven't you figured that out yet? She turned to face him fully, this man who'd become her anchor, her partner, her future. I need to tell you something. Okay. I'm falling in love with you, maybe already have fallen. I don't know when it happened or how, but it's there. And I needed you to know. Luca's expression softened into something tender and vulnerable. I fell in love with you in that cafe in Barcelona, when you were soaking wet and terrified and still arguing with me about trust. I've been falling ever since. Why didn't you say something? Because you needed to figure out who you were without your father, without the crisis, without anyone telling you what to feel or who to be. He cupped her face gently. But if you're asking now, if you're ready now, yes, I love you completely, messily, for real. Alessia kissed him, finally closing the distance they'd been maintaining for months. It was gentle at first, tentative, two people learning each other, then deeper, more certain, like coming home to a place she'd never been, but somehow always known existed. They pulled apart eventually, foreheads touching, both of them smiling like idiots. So what now? She asked. Now we live, we build a life together, we figure out what normal people do when they're not running from criminals or dismantling empires. I have no idea how to do that. Me neither. But we'll figure it out together. They went inside, made dinner, argued about whether to watch a documentary or a comedy, settled on a comedy, fell asleep on the couch halfway through, tangled together, safe in the life they'd built from the ruins of everything they'd lost. 6 months later, Alicia graduated from her architecture program. Luca was in the audience, cheering louder than anyone else when she walked across the stage to accept her diploma. She'd done it, finished something she started, achieved something that was hers alone, built a foundation for a career her father would never have allowed. They celebrated at a small restaurant in San Telmo, just the two of them, and a bottle of wine that cost more than it should. To new beginnings, Luca said, raising his glass. To choosing ourselves, Alessia added. They drank, talked about the future, made plans that felt real instead of hypothetical. Alessia had a job offer from a firm in Buenos Aires. Luca's consulting work was going well enough that he could be selective about clients. They were building something stable, something lasting. Around midnight, walking home through quiet streets, Luca stopped suddenly. What? Alessia asked. Marry me. She stared at him. What? Marry me. Not because anyone's forcing us, not for business or alliances or debt. Marry me because we love each other and we want to build a life together, and we deserve to have something good come from all the bad we survived. Are you serious? Completely. I don't have a ring. I didn't plan this. But I'm asking anyway. He took her hands. Alessia Virelli, Sofia Mendez, whoever you want to be. Will you marry me? She thought about the arranged marriage she'd run from, about Devereaux and contracts and being treated like property, about her father's desperate attempts to control her future, about everything she'd fought against and everything she'd survived. And then she thought about Luca, about mornings on the balcony and late-night conversations and the way he'd stood with her through everything, about choosing love instead of running from it, about building something real and honest and theirs. Yes, she said, yes, I'll marry you. He kissed her there in the street, both of them laughing and crying and completely sure this was right. No contracts, no arrangements, no one deciding for them, just two people who'd found each other in the darkness and decided to choose light. They got married 3 months later in a small ceremony at a park in Palermo. Julia flew in from Geneva, crying through the whole thing. A few friends from the university and Luca's work attended. No family, no empire. No ghosts from the past except the ones they'd made peace with. Alessia wore a simple white dress she'd picked out herself. Luca wore a suit that actually fit him properly. They wrote their own vows, promises to choose each other every day, to be honest even when it was hard, to build a life based on freedom instead of control. When the officiant pronounced them married, when Luca kissed her and everyone cheered, Alessia felt something she'd never felt before. Complete. Not because she'd found someone to complete her, she'd completed herself by surviving and choosing and becoming who she was meant to be. But complete because she'd found someone who understood that journey and wanted to walk beside her anyway. The reception was small and loud and perfect. Julia cornered Alessia at one point, hugged her tight. I'm so happy for you, Julia said. You deserve this, all of this. Thank you for helping me, for not telling my father where I was. Always. That's what friends do. Julia pulled back, studied her. You look different, lighter. I feel lighter, like I'm finally living my own life. You are, and it looks good on you. Later, dancing with Luca under string lights while someone's playlist mixed tango with American jazz, Alessia let herself feel everything she'd been holding back. Joy, relief, hope, love, all of it crashing over her like a wave she didn't have to fight. What are you thinking? Luca asked, pulling her closer. That I'm grateful for everything, even the bad parts, because they led me here. That's very evolved of you. Don't get used to it. I'm still processing. She rested her head against his chest, heard his heartbeat steady and strong. But right now, in this moment, I'm just happy. Me too. They danced until the music stopped, until the lights went down, until it was just them and the Buenos Aires night, and a future that belonged to them alone. A year after the wedding, Alessia finally made the trip to Switzerland. Luca came with her, as promised, holding her hand through the whole flight, the drive to the prison, the security checks that felt invasive but necessary. Her father looked smaller than she remembered, older. The prison jumpsuit hung loose on his frame, and there were new lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. But he smiled when he saw her through the glass partition, genuine and broken and grateful. Alessia. His voice through the phone was rough. You came. I came. She sat down, Luca standing behind her, a steady presence. How are you? Surviving, That's all any of us can do, right? He studied her face. You look happy. That's good. That's what I wanted. I am happy. I got married. I heard. Julia mentioned it in one of her letters. I'm glad you found someone good. He is good. Better than I deserve, probably. No, you deserve everything good in this world. I just couldn't give it to you. Her father glanced at Luca. Thank you for protecting her, for helping her when I couldn't. She protected herself, Luca said. I just stood with her while she did it. Marco nodded, looked back at Alessia. I got your letter, the one you sent last month. You said you forgave me. I'm trying to. It's a process. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm grateful you're trying. He leaned forward slightly. I want you to know I'm making restitution. Everything I stole, everyone I hurt, I'm working with prosecutors to make it right. It won't fix anything, but it's something. That's good, Dad. I'm proud of you for doing that. The word Dad seemed to hit him hard. His eyes filled with tears, he blinked back. I thought I'd lost the right to hear you call me that. You did for a while, but I'm giving it back to you. Not because you earned it, because I want to. Because holding on to anger was hurting me more than it was hurting you. They talked for 30 more minutes, about her architecture work, about his prison routine, about nothing and everything. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't easy. But it was honest, and that mattered more than comfort. As the guard signaled their time was ending, Marco pressed his hand against the glass. Alessia matched it from her side. Their palms separated by barriers but connected by blood and history and complicated love. Be happy, he said, echoing his letter. That's all I ask. Be everything I wasn't brave enough to be. I will. I am. She stood, prepared to leave. I'll come back. Not often, but sometimes. When I'm ready. I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere. They left the prison, emerged into Swiss sunlight that felt different than it used to. Cleaner, less oppressive. Alessia breathed deep, feeling something release in her chest that she hadn't known she was holding. You okay? Luca asked. Yeah, I really am. She took his hand, laced their fingers together. Can we go? I want to go home. Buenos Aires? Yeah, home. They flew back that night, leaving Switzerland and all its ghosts behind. Alessia looked out the window as the plane climbed, watching the country where she'd grown up disappear beneath clouds. She didn't feel sad about leaving, didn't feel anything except relief and gratitude and the solid weight of Luca's hand in hers. She'd survived. She'd chosen freedom over obligation. She'd built a life that was completely, utterly, beautifully hers. And that was more than enough. 5 years later, Alessia sat on a different balcony in a different apartment, bigger now, with room for the drafting table where she designed buildings and the home office where Luca ran his consulting business. Buenos Aires stretched out below them, familiar and beloved, the city that had given them space to become who they were meant to be. Their daughter, 3 years old, named Julia, after the friend who'd helped Alessia escape, was asleep inside, worn out from a day at the park. Luca was reading news on his tablet, occasionally reading headlines out loud that made them both laugh or shake their heads. Alessia's phone buzzed, a message from her father, who'd been released on parole after serving 8 years. He'd moved to a small town outside Geneva, was working construction, trying to rebuild a life with nothing left of his empire except memories and regrets. Julia is beautiful. Thank you for sending the photo. I hope someday I can meet her, but I understand if that's not possible. I'm just grateful to know you're happy. Love, Dad. She showed Luca the message. He read it, looked at her with a question in his eyes. Maybe next year, Alessia said. When she's older. When I'm ready. No rush, we've got time. We do, don't we? After everything, we actually have time. All the time in the world. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over Buenos Aires, their daughter sleeping safely inside, their future stretching out before them full of possibilities and choices and freedom. Alessia thought about the girl she'd been, trapped, controlled, desperate to escape. She thought about everything that girl had survived to become the woman she was now. And she felt nothing but gratitude. She'd run from an arranged marriage and found real love. She'd escaped her father's empire and built her own life. She'd been sold like property and chosen to be free. The journey had been brutal, But the destination was worth every scar. Luca reached over, took her hand without looking away from the sunset. She squeezed back, feeling the weight of their rings, symbols they'd chosen, not symbols forced upon them. "I love you," she said. "I love you too." And in that moment, on that balcony, with their daughter sleeping and their future waiting, Alessia Varelli, now Alessia Castellano, now truly and completely herself, felt something she'd spent her whole life searching for. Peace. Not the kind that came from never being challenged, not the kind that required pretending the past didn't exist, but the kind that came from surviving hell and choosing, every single day, to build heaven anyway. She'd been promised to a stranger. She'd been hunted by criminals. She'd been trapped by her father's desperate deals. But she'd refused to be anyone's pawn. She'd fought for her freedom. She'd chosen herself. And that choice had made all the difference. The sun disappeared below the horizon. The city lights came on. Their daughter stirred inside, calling out in her sleep. Luca stood to check on her, kissed Alessia's forehead as he passed. She stayed on the balcony a moment longer, watching Buenos Aires come alive with night, feeling the warm breeze on her skin, existing in the life she'd built from nothing but courage and stubborn refusal to give up. Somewhere in Switzerland, her father was probably looking at the same photo she'd sent, trying to reconcile the granddaughter he'd never met with the empire he'd destroyed, trying to control a daughter who was never his to control. Somewhere in New York, Devereaux was probably building new empires, making new deals, never thinking twice about the arranged marriage that never happened. And here in Buenos Aires, Alessia was simply living, loving, being. It wasn't the ending anyone had written for her. It was better. It was hers. And that was all that mattered.